Ho, ho, ho. Hello, everybody.
Matt called, and his wrecker's not ready, and he signed up for a job that needs a wrecker. So, we threw a wrecker on a trailer. And here we go. We're about fueled up, gonna get back on the road. Okay, here we are in the middle of nowhere in Parowan, Utah. According to GPS, the truck is somewhere over there. I'm waiting for Matt to get here so he can show us where we're headed. There we are. Somebody showed up.
On time.
Yeah, right on time. Right on time, Tim. Yeah. Well, we're going to go over here somewhere.
Yeah.
And find a truck.
I've only seen pictures. Rory's seen the pictures.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what we're in for, but it looks like it's frozen in there pretty good.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Looks pretty good.
We didn't show up with a real support vehicle. We got White Lightning back there. Jamie's driving it in. Yep, I'm hoping the ground's nice and frozen deep down. I think it is. Yep. Might drive it out. It's been here a couple weeks.
Really?
Looks like there's been tracks in there pretty fresh. I wonder if they've driven it out. I talked to them this morning. They said it's here.
Right there.
Hang on.
Whoa! Here we go.
What do you think?
Well, based off the pictures and everything, I'm gonna throw my panel hitch in there,
Nice.
pick it up, swing it out of those tracks, and then pull it.
That's a bold strategy. We'll see how it plays out
We'll
for
see
him.
if it pays off.
Looks like they've been giving it the old college try.
The
Trying to
old
get it out of
college
there.
try.
So every once in a while, Rory gets a job that he just can't handle by himself, so he has to call in somebody like me to make sure that it gets done.
Rory's actually saving our bacon twice today.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
the wrecker running, and I took this job going, the wrecker will do this.
Oh,
And then we had some problems with the wrecker. And
man, that record's
And a
taking
wrecker would have
forever.
been perfect for this job.
it would have.
Alright, let's do this.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, try reverse.
I can see him spinning right here, but you're in the dirt too. I mean, in the mud.
We don't have any drive. They didn't tell me that they broke it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because the drive shaft's spinning,
Yeah.
but the tires aren't. So we either lost a ring and pinion or one axle shaft and not letting the other one spin.
This drive shaft's laying on the ground.
Oh yeah, they broke the front one.
So I wonder if we can just pick up on one tire at a time.
Basically what we're gonna have to do to break it loose. I'm impressed.
I wonder if the front is less stuck. It looks like it's less stuck.
Yeah, we can come to the front and pick up and see if it'll budge.
wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna harpoon it right through there.
There you go.
I'm at the max of this jack.
What's happening here? Oh,
So
I
it's
know.
frozen around the tire.
Just put it on auto, man.
And so by deflating the tire, this bulge right here could technically squeeze through the ice. In theory.
I agree with the theory.
Woo!
There she goes.
Woo! Good job.
All right. Hey, we're 50% out of here.
Right. Well, 25.
25 is what I'd say. Holy cow, I thought that would come up sooner.
Well, the frame is frozen to the ground.
Where can they get their hoodie at, Rory?
Trailmater.com, I think.
It is. It's trailmater.com. There's no thing I think about it.
We'll set her down then. If we can chip some of this mud out of this rim, we might be able to pick just this tire up. This one this one looks a little,
That one we got to twist out.
that one looks too much work.
Getting my vitamins and minerals. Rory just did an unnecessary front dig, which is one of the coolest things you can do. All right, I'm gonna.
Holy cow.
See if I can put some pro. Letting some air out.
Yeah, if I can find a valve stem. I'm trying to hunt around without knocking it off.
All right, we've been digging on this, prying on it, pulling on it. Rory's got a jack under there and he's putting the hurt to it. And it ain't moved yet. We got a bottle jack under here, floor jack under the spring. Old Trailmater's giving it all he's got. Is it a he or a she?
We're prospecting.
All right, we're gonna do some more prospecting here. We'll let you know if we find what we're looking for. That is so hard, there are sparks coming off from it.
You want a half round piece of pipe?
This is the most effective tool we've had so far.
Okay.
It's working like garbage, but it definitely is the most effective we've got.
Yep.
All right.
We've used.
Look, the valve stem.
You found it? Why are you more excited?
Woo!
Woohoo! The sweet sound of air.
Right.
I'm wondering if it's all axle now.
Holy cow.
You want me to do tiny little kinetic bumps off the back, like real small? All right, we're getting white lightning involved in the equation. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
All right, so the plan now is to hook up on the front and kind of pull it at a little bit of an angle. That way we've got the extra leverage of the length of the truck. And we're gonna try to pivot off of this back wheel and see if we can pull this other back wheel out of its hole. Right now it's looking like that tire is not stuck in anymore, but the axle is just sitting in this adobe frozen mud. Okay, stop, Jamie. Straighten your wheels out to the right. Okay. Okay, Jamie, 4.5. What do you think? Is it doing anything?
Oh, that back is frozen.
You seeing anything at all, Rory? Okay, one more, Jamie. No, that back axle is planted.
Yeah.
Okay, give us a solid 4. What do you think? Need a different piece of equipment in here? How far is Robert out? Because he's got a jack in his wrecker.
Better off going that middle road.
Yeah.
But usually saws out later. It's moving.
It's moving!
That's what I'm gonna do. Stay a little bit.
It's coming out. Coming out. Look at that! It's just this tire now, that's it.
There it is. There it is.
Oh,
Woo! Look at that hole.
Okay, we're headed out of here.
What a mess. Let's lengthen your rope out.
So we lengthened the rope out so we've got a little more spring in it.
And then what did Matt tell you to do?
Go like the wind.
Go like the wind.
Rory's gonna go like the wind. We're doing it.
Get your back down. Back down.
Well, there it is. It's up on there. See?
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's just froze up in there. We won't let the tire spin. So we kind of had to drag her out. The front drive line broke the yoke on it. Like I said, once they let it sit and freeze in there, that's what snapped the rear axle shaft, is it just froze and nothing was moving to give at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, there it is. We got it.
Not only did Rory help with this job, but now we're gonna go work on the wrecker. He's gonna help me get it going so I can make it the KOH with more than a trailer queen, whatever.
You can actually drive around,
Yes.
make noises.
First, you guys are gonna take me to lunch because I deserve it.
Right,
We're going to Brad's or Hermes?
I don't care.
Brad's.
anywhere. And like always, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it.
The big XQC is here. He's got his RPG. He's ready. Yeah. As he flies through the skies, Tifu in the RV. Using.
Look at that little hole we got.
No, but
5 minutes of work and that's what we got.
That's why he never wears a coat, 'cause he's always got to do things the hard way. So he's always working up a sweat.
This is like working on the railroad. I've been working on this stuff truck all the live long day. Rory's working on it too, and he isn't getting any pay.
Right. Ain't it sad?
This is a 1995 Ford Taurus SHO, and it's a high-performance sedan by 1990s standards. The Ford Taurus was a tremendously popular vehicle in the late 80s and early 90s, and Ford decided to make a fast version. SHO stood for Super High Output, and it was a big deal back then. Today, I'm going to review the SHO and show you all of its quirks and features. Before I get started, good news, this Ford Taurus SHO is currently for sale, being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. The SHO was the fast version of the Taurus, like I mentioned, and not many have survived, but this one just had a recent service and it's offered with no reserve. So once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below to head over to the live auction for this Taurus SHO, where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. All right, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the Taurus SHO with a little overview of exactly what this car is. So, the Ford Taurus first came out in 1986, and it was supposed to be this revolutionary car for Ford, a totally new direction for the mid-size sedan, and actually, it was exactly that. It totally changed everything in the domestic mid-size sedan world. It was small, it was aerodynamic, it looked totally different from everything else, and it was a smash hit, a huge success. They had a sedan version, they had a station wagon version, and there was even an upscale model called the Mercury Sable, and all of them sold very well. So Ford figured, why not make a performance model also? So for the 1989 model year, they came out with the Taurus SHO. It stood for Super High Output, and it was the fast version with a mandatory manual transmission and under the hood, a V6 that came from Yamaha. 3 liters, 220 horsepower, and 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds. Now, this particular Taurus SHO is a second generation model. The Ford Taurus was redesigned for the 92 model year, although really it was more of a major facelift, and the SHO continued on using that Yamaha 3-liter V6 and the manual transmission. But the manual-only situation was hurting sales. Not that many people wanted a manual performance family sedan. So the big news for the 93 model year was the addition of an automatic, which this car has. Now, obviously, at that time, in the early 90s, automatics were slower than manuals, with their slow torque converters and fewer gears, and so, to compensate for that, Ford gave the automatic SHOs a bigger engine. Still had 220 horsepower, but it was a 3.2-liter V6, still from Yamaha, and torque for the automatic models boosted from 200 pound-feet up to 215. Now, it's these second-generation Taurus SHO models that seem to be the most desired among enthusiasts today, both the manuals and the automatics. They were kind of the iconic, emblematic Taurus SHO from this era, and performance wasn't as bad as you might think. These cars only weighed around 3,400 pounds, pretty good for a mid-size sedan, especially a domestic one from that time, and like I said, 0 to 60 under 7 seconds in the mid-6s. 220 horses may not seem like all that much, but it was only 5 horsepower behind the Mustang GT from that era, and the 0 to 60 time was only a second slower than a Corvette. It wasn't exactly the best era for automotive performance, but this did a pretty good job fitting in with sedan practicality. Now, when these cars were originally on sale, I was a little boy growing up, and I remember seeing them on the road, and I really wanted one. Younger viewers watching this today may not think a Ford Taurus with some performance mods is all that desirable, but it really was back then. It had excellent performance and some other cool upgrades, which I'll show you, that really made it special and cool in an era where performance cars were kind of hard to come by. So what exactly did the SHO get over the standard Taurus? I already mentioned the engine, the Yamaha V6 with extra power, and you get under the hood, you can see it looks really cool. Some say the engine in an SHO looks better than the car, and that might indeed be true. It's a nice looking engine that says SHO stamped right onto it, and just in case you're confused, it also says SHO underneath the hood on the inside, so you know what you're looking at when the hood is up. And it said SHO pretty much everywhere else on the outside of the car as well. The doors got extra cladding on their lower half to give it a more performance-y look, and you can see SHO is imprinted into the front door on both sides to make sure everybody knew what they were looking at. The SHO also got special alloy wheels, these saw blade alloy wheels that sort of looked like a design that the Fox body Mustang Cobra had offered, and in the center cap, SHO is printed. Around back on the rear bumper, you have SHO imprinted once again, just to make sure from every angle you could tell this was the performance version of the Taurus. On the back, you also had dual exhaust, which is of course a traditional performance car cue, and this one had them too, and it looked pretty cool, actually. Now, one other interesting thing to see in the back, you got a trunk spoiler here, and this is one way that you can tell apart the 93 to 95 SHOs from the original 92 from this generation. The 92s didn't have the trunk spoiler, the 93 to 95s did. And since we're geeking out on little yearly changes, the 94 and 95 SHOs had body colored door handles, as you can see here, but the 92 and the 93 models had black plastic door handles, which is another way that you can tell some of them apart. But interestingly, for all the upgrades on the outside of the car, letting everybody know that this is the special one, the interior was pretty much unchanged from a standard Ford Taurus. You did get upgraded seats, which, as you can see here, have seen better days, but the seats had bolstering that was designed to be more sporty and performance-y. And over on the passenger side of the dashboard, you had this little panel that says SHO, which was kind of clearly a cutout afterthought they just stuck in the dashes. Other than that, the interior really was the same as other Ford Taurus models from this era. Not really a lot of upgrades in here, but there are a few interesting quirks. Probably my very favorite is the way that Ford did steering wheel audio controls. This was starting to become a thing in the early 90s. Automakers were putting like volume controls and next track on the steering wheel, but the Ford steering wheel from this era only had room for the cruise control. That's how they designed it. They didn't leave extra space for the audio controls, and it would probably be years before Ford designed another steering wheel, so they gave you the next best thing. They mounted a few controls here at the top of the dashboard right next to the steering wheel, so even though you can't tap them while your hand is on the wheel, you can get pretty close. The funny thing, of course, was these weren't that much closer to you than just reaching down to the actual stereo to adjust things, but they were a little closer, and so that was Ford's stand-in for steering wheel audio controls at the time. Now, the other interesting thing in this center control stack is the climate controls. You can see displayed in the center is the climate control temperature, unless you press outside temp, and then it shows you the outside temperature. That was either a interior or exterior temperature reader, depending on your preference. Also unusual here is the labeling of stuff. Instead of just using images to show air coming out like the defroster or the vents in the floor like every other car, it writes it out. You can see it says floor or vent or pnul and fleur. So that's abbreviated panel and floor, or FLIR and DEF, abbreviated floor and defroster. They wrote that stuff out for some reason, which seems strange, but there's a lot of strange labeling in this car. For instance, the power lock button doesn't have an image of a lock and an unlocked lock like every other car. Instead, it's this, U and L. U for unlock, L for lock, which is fine until you start selling cars in foreign markets that don't speak English, and then you gotta make totally new buttons, which is why people don't usually do that, but Ford did. Also in the gauge cluster, the temperature gauge, you can see it says H and C, and in the middle, normal. You're not supposed to just know the normal range, it actually says normal written across it. And instead of showing a little arrow next to the gas pump icon to show you which side your fuel door is on, it is written fuel door with an arrow just to make it incredibly plain and obvious. Again, some strange markings in here. Now, the other notable quirk in this interior is that all of the these early 90s Ford plastics are aging at varied rates. And so that means stuff is different colors. You can see the steering wheel center is different from the color of the steering wheel rim. Door panels and dashboard panels that are right next to each other have aged differently, and so their colors are different. It doesn't really look that great, but it's worth pointing out this was probably also true back when the car was new. This wasn't exactly Ford's best era of interior quality, and as these relatively cheap plastics have aged, they're not exactly looking better. But with that said, you got one of these, you did get premium sound. Which high-end audio brand provided the sound? Well, it doesn't say. It just says premium sound. It doesn't say Bose or Macintosh or any of that, just premium sound. It was generic premium sound, better than the generic regular sound. And as you might expect, some of the same quality issues were present in the back as you saw up front. Take a look at the door panel for different colored plastics. You can see they've aged totally differently, and they are very different colored now, although again, that may have been how it was back when this car was new. Now, aside from that rather interesting notable item, nothing else worth noting in the back seat in this car. It's just a simple, basic back seat from a mid-size sedan in the 1990s. Nothing luxurious or quirky or interesting back here. But I do want to finish telling the story of the Taurus SHO. So after the 95 model year, the second generation SHO and Taurus went away, and in 96 they came out with this, the jelly bean shaped, football shaped Ford Taurus. And they did do an SHO version of that, and it had a V8. Again, Yamaha provided the only V8 ever to go into a Ford Taurus, but it was a small one, 3.4-liter V8, and not that much more horsepower. And more importantly, everybody hated the way that this Taurus looked. Ford had taken a risk with this design. It didn't really pay off, and the car started to lose popularity. And then SUVs showed up, the Taurus lagged, and the SHO went away completely until the mid-2010s when they brought it back. This was the revived SHO, although now they called it the Taurus Show. They stopped saying SHO and just said the word show instead, apparently forgetting that it used to be an acronym for super high output. Now, this Taurus Show was a fantastic car. It used the EcoBoost V6. It had great power, great performance, decent technology. It was great, but in my mind, the Taurus SHO is this car. This is the Taurus SHO, the one I grew up with, the high-performance Taurus. Now, interestingly, the popularity of the SHO spawned a few variants that were also made. For example, Ford made an SHO version of the Ranger as a concept car, although it never went into production. It was a cool idea, kind of a performance truck. In Canada, Ford of Canada made an SHO version of the Mercury Sable, and they did it using aluminum body panels. It was called the Sable AIV for Aluminum Intensive Vehicle. This was years before aluminum body panels became relatively common, and they made a few hundred of these and even sold them to the public.
We just play Asphalt 9 and watch shit on YouTube.
Lighter than a standard Taurus SHO.
Give us a follow.
Pretty special car, actually. Also interesting, some car customizers and modifiers took the tiniest Ford, the Festiva small hatchback, put an SHO engine in it and called it the Shogun. They only made a handful of these, but the car's especially notable because Jay Leno has one, and because it was a ridiculous vehicle, this much power in a tiny little subcompact car. Ford also made an SHO wagon, but only one or two. It never actually went into production, though it would have been cool taking this fast performance sedan and wagonifying. And finally, we move on to cargo space in the trunk, which is fairly standard for a mid-sized sedan from this era. Nothing unusual or exciting about this at all. One interesting thing about the trunk, though, when opening it, there's a little latch on the driver's floor. You can lift that and it opens the trunk, but if you want to lock it out and keep people from opening the trunk, you do it there at the latch. You can turn it and lock it, and then the latch won't lift up and open the trunk. Instead of having some other lock system on the trunk itself, you're locking the latch and the fuel door. Also interesting in terms of lock switch with this car, it has the great exterior
Let's
keypad
watch.
feature. So if you want to
Whoops.
go swimming, you don't want to take your keys with you, you can lock them in the car, and when you come back, just enter your little keypad code and the door will unlock, and you don't have to always have your keys. A brilliant idea that Ford has used on a lot of its cars. All right, driving the second generation Taurus SHO. Now, as you've seen, this SHO is far from perfect. The seats have rips, the exterior needs paint, there's squeaks, there's rattles, some stuff is broken. I mean, this car has definitely been around the block. Usually, I try to review really nice examples of cars, but the simple truth is on these SHOs, they're just not out there anymore. When I was a kid, they were around. It was a new car then, but the attrition started quickly, and they are just not common vehicles anymore. They're not easy to find. So, you know, this one showed up on the site, it was local, and I thought I should just do it before I can't find any of them. So, my thoughts on the SHO. All right, first off, I'm flooring it here, and I thought this was the fastest car in the world when I was a kid. I remember thinking to myself, 220 horsepower, I wanted one of these for my first car so badly. It was 2006-5 when I bought my first car, and these were 10, 12 years old. They were like 6-8 grand, and I was like, this is the coolest thing, I really want one. But it didn't work out. And I've always kind of wondered, you know, what would that have been like? And back in the mid-2000s, it probably still would have felt quick. But these days, I drive a lot of special cars, flooring it here, keeping up with the Toyota CHR. No, I'm passing the CHR. But it's not fast. Like, this car is not exceptionally fast by modern standards. 0 to 60 in the mid to high 6-second range. That's just like normal car territory now. Like Corollas and Civics are doing that. That's nothing to think is special. But I really want to underscore that this car was considered special back in the day. Now, one thing I noticed very quickly when driving this car, the steering is like heavily over-assisted and over-boosted power steering. This was pretty common in the days of kind of early cars with power steering, you know, in the 80s, the early 90s, especially domestic cars, which were generally tuned more for kind of luxurious performance, comfortable ride, that sort of thing. And that's definitely true of this car as well. I went and looked quite hard to find, hey, did they do anything to the steering or the suspension on the SHOs to make it better than a regular Taurus? And there's not all that much out there that says that they did. It seems like they mostly kept that stuff the same, and instead they pursued cosmetic mods and obviously the powertrain. I don't think this car was intended to handle dramatically better, and driving it now, it doesn't really feel like it does. It certainly doesn't feel like a sports car. It feels like a mid-90s American sedan with over-boosted power steering. But this era of Taurus was known for being relatively nimble, especially compared to other American cars of its day and later Taurus models, and it does have sort of that 90s car, you know, relatively connected type of feel, since there's just less electronics separating you from the driving experience and less, well, everything, frankly. But I wouldn't necessarily call this like a high-performance-y, sporty car driving it around. It's true of the acceleration and it's true of the steering feel. And I think at the end of the day, the thing that keeps this car alive and keeps me turning my head when I see one to this day is like the nostalgia factor. Like, yeah, it's not that performance-y by modern standards, but it was cool then, and I remember it as a part of my childhood, something I truly aspired to as a kid. And it's neat to be able to drive one and finally review one on this channel after I've wanted to for so long. It may not have the feel of like a true high-performance car by today's standards, but to me it's cool. And that coolness transcends like numbers on paper, and it's more about just like the ethos and the feel and the look of this car. And I still think this car has it when it comes to that stuff, even if it's not that performance-y by today's standards. And so that's the 1995 Ford Taurus SHO, the high-performance sedan that everybody wanted in the 1990s. It's not much by today's standards in terms of looks or performance, but the young boy Doug really wanted one of these cars, and it's cool to check it out. And you can get this one on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give the SHO a Doug score. And the Doug score is here, 41 out of 100, which places the Taurus SHO here against some other sort of relevant cars. The Taurus SHO was cool by the standards of its day, and it's still rare, special, and kind of fast, but by modern standards, it doesn't have much in the way of excitement. I'm still happy I had the chance to review one, as these just aren't around anymore. The younger version of myself would be very jealous I spent the day with a Taurus SHO.
All right. Let's go. Matt's off-road recovery.
Just kind of like started like fishtailing towards the hill.
So we got a call for a Volkswagen Vanagon that is trapped down at Babylon Mill. It's early in the morning. I thought that I was going to set this recovery up for like first light, but it's still really dark out there, so that's what I get.
You look
for
tired,
guessing.
Matt.
I should have looked.
What time the sun comes up?
Yeah, I should have. But anyway, we've got a hard appointment this morning. We've got to be back for, so we're gonna go do it in the dark, and we're gonna take you with us. So the weather, it's dark and rainy. All right, we're getting close to where the customer is. So there's a I don't know if you'd call it a dugway, or it's just a road cut into the side of a clay mountain, and that's what he's stuck on. He says these crossways blocking the road. I can tell nobody's been in here, so I don't think he's really impeded any traffic. But we're gonna go get him out so he doesn't.
It's starting to get light out there, so hopefully you'll be able to see it all. That'll be nice.
That will be nice. We got quite a bit of rain through the night. Like, it didn't rain really hard, but it was persistent. So everything's soaked up pretty good. That's some pretty big pools of water. I'm curious to see like what condition this hill is. I know he couldn't get up it in his Volkswagen Vanagon, and they actually do pretty good. They got, you know, rear engine weight over.
What's a Vanagon?
Vanagon.
Yeah, it's a Volkswagen. It's the liquid cooled rear engine 4-cylinder bus of the early 80s. Volkswagen Vanagon.
Like they made a van again?
Yeah, again. Oh, I think I'm gonna want to be in 4-wheel drive.
All right, let's go lock in the house.
A little bit slick out there. I can see him down there.
Here we go. You got to drop down in first?
Yes, I do. This is a treacherous. I'm not just throwing that word around. This is a treacherous little section of road, and I'm concerned about pulling him up a bit, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it slow and steady, and we're gonna do it with a short rope. Oh my goodness, look at that.
There he is.
All right, you're probably wondering why I called you all here today, and the reason I did that was to talk to you about the awesome judges that we've got coming for the Off-Road Record Games. We searched the whole world for the judgiest, most biased judges. Judges that could be bought off, judges that have vendettas. Some of these judges are just judgy. We have got an awesome lineup. We have got Bleepin' Matt from Bleepin' Jeep, Bleepin' Colt from Bleepin' Jeep.
We've got Send It Ruby,
Connor and Brad from Barnes 4-Wheel Drive, Rudy from Rudy's Adventure and Designs, Alan from Yankum Ropes,
Robbie Layton,
Casey Liddell from the YouTube channel Casey Liddell,
Chris Miller from Ultimate Off-Road Field Trip,
George Brown from, where's he from?
Planet Earth.
Planet Earth!
Don't forget about Chad Fab.
From the YouTube channel Chad Fab. We've got the world famous LT, Lawrence Tolman, coming down to do this. We got Scott Stapley.
one of the hosers from Elevated Service and Supply.
And we have a special guest, Judge, Colonel Manwaring from the Utah National Guard.
How you doing?
Good. Oh man, so what's going on?
I guess the ground yesterday was way too soft for
Yeah.
me to go up. Just kind of like started like fishtailing towards the hill.
This is a scary section to do that on.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't see like how deep this was last night.
Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going? I'm Marco.
Well, yeah, this is about where I thought you were. We'll get you out of here. This is greasy. We're going to go nice and slow. We got one point right there. That's all we're gonna need. I'm worried about this license plate.
You want me to take it off?
Yeah, just because this is gonna be swiping back and forth underneath here. Okay, you manual or automatic? Okay. You want to go ahead and jump in it?
Sure.
For this first little bit, I'm going to want your wheels turned hard to the left.
Okay.
And in neutral.
Okay.
So just hold the brakes when I start pulling
Ah.
the brakes off.
Okay.
Just turn your wheels hard to the left. Right there. Okay, we're
This
going to see how
is-
this goes. You may,
A
you
terrible
may need to
car.
help a little bit. I don't think you're going to help much at all, and I don't want the back end swinging down.
Yeah.
But let's just see if neutral will do this.
Okay.
Ah, I don't want that.
Straighten out your wheel a little bit. Like bring it, turn it left. Keep coming, keep coming. Yeah, right there.
This part I'm nervous about.
I'll watch him. You want him staying high, following you up?
Yeah. If he can basically keep his wheel in that, this is I don't know, man. This one I can slow.
You're doing good. He's staying where he needs to be. Turn your wheel a little left so it's not left. Yeah. So you're not dragging, yeah.
All right, we're at the top of the hill, so we're just gonna pull over here and cut him loose. Yeah, how was that?
That was good. That was nice.
It's a beautiful morning.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a cool area. You just camping out here? What are you taking pictures?
Yeah, I'm a photographer, so I was just gonna try to do like sunrise or something.
All right. Well, you haven't missed it yet.
What size shirt do you want?
Oh, wow. That's nice.
All right, there you go.
Oh, thank you so much.
We got there and the guy was blocking the road, so we were able to hook up to him and just pull him up these hills. They're really greasy and they're really tight turns, so he was nervous to go around those, which I totally understand. Everything went super good. He's happy to be out of here. Still morning, he'll be able to get some beautiful pictures. It is an awesome day out here.
Well said, Tom.
So, Matt is back working on the wrecker because we have a very important event coming up. So, Rhett and I, the B team, are here and we're going to get a Honda Talon, I think, some kind of Honda Talon or something, out of the Togerville Falls Road. Rhett is here with the weather.
It's sunny. There's no clouds in the sky that I can see. We got snow every direction pretty much that we can see. We're just in like a nice snow bowl. So, I don't know what to call it.
Snowless bowl.
Yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, it's really pretty out there. It's a nice day. I don't even know what the temperature is. Probably like 50, 60, in that range.
We're gonna go see what's going on. We think the clutch is out on this Honda Talon, so Rhett will probably just have to coast it all the way down to the bottom. Supposedly it only has 10 miles on it, which will be weird if it's already lost its clutch, but we'll go find out.
All right, I think we found them. Right there. Well, it's definitely just free rolling because they had to block the tires with rocks.
So you think the clutch just went out?
Yeah, so we were climbing up and it just died while we were crawling up.
Okay.
I mean, it's only got a mile and a half. This is the first trip it's been out. We were able to get it started, but then it would only go a little bit and then it would die. We'd let it cool off for a little while and then we could start it and we could like get one turn backed up and then it would die again. But a lot of times you'd put it in gear and it would just rev, wouldn't even engage. The first time it died, the clutch light came on. That's the only reason I'm assuming it's the clutch, and plus it won't go in and out of gear.
Will it roll?
It will roll, yeah.
We'll just throw these guys in there and they'll just coast it on down.
How far, and you'll pull them when you need
and
to.
Yep, there's a couple flat spots, we'll pull them and
okay.
Get them all the way.
All right. Well.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be nice. Yeah, we better put on our seatbelt. Safety first. This will be fun. I get to fight the steering wheel. I'll tell you this, power steering was one of the best inventions. Let's hope this thing rides nice. We're moving, we're going good. When we're moving, it's not that hard to steer. These things always sound like they're falling apart whenever they're coasting. The engine really just hides that noise. Wind on my face, the breeze in your hair. Felt good. Here we go. This thing coasts really nice. Put my hat backwards because I could feel it lifting a little. Get pulled after this spot. I don't want to go too fast down this. Why would you stop all the way back there? Because we're hooking up. No, you're not rolling.
That's good. So Rhett, I'm gonna pull you to the top of the hill and I'll let you go at the top again, okay? All right, remember there's one more dip down there that you're gonna have to try and coast through.
Yeah.
I would prefer not to hook back up until you get clear down the water.
This thing rolls really nice. 1 second. We're moving. Just a little jump start. It's moving. Come on. We're going. We got it.
Not enough speed, huh?
Yeah, we had to give it a jump start up there though. It was not rolling when we put it into neutral. Okay, I guess we'll stay hooked up.
Yep.
All right, all right, all right, all right. Oh, shit. I sparkled.
Okay.
Okay, you ready? Nice and easy, Rat.
Yep.
All right. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Jervings, thanks for the follow.
Okay, turn passenger. Now straight. All right, we're gonna have to pull you on.
It was a good try.
GTA Spano. Jervings, thanks for the follow.
Go more to driver's side. Should I start straightening?
I would. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd just go straight back. Go ahead and crank all the way left. There you go. Perfect. I'll get her strapped down.
What is going on?
You're a lifesaver for sure.
No problem. For you. Oh, thank you, bud. Yep. We'll get him out.
That was a pretty easy job. We're heading back to the shop to see if we can help Matt get the wrecker done. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Do 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 do.
This is a 1991 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL. And the crazy thing is, it has a manual transmission. For the last 20 plus years, we've thought of the Mercedes SL as a comfortable luxury cruiser with an automatic and a lot of pampering, luxurious features. An old man cruiser, but they used to make them with 3 pedals. And this is the last version of the SL ever offered with a manual. Today, I'm going to review it and show you all of its quirks and features. Before I get started, big news, this 300 SL is currently for sale, being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. This 300 SL has that manual transmission and the factory hardtop, in addition to the convertible soft top and some good recent servicing, and it's offered with no reserve. So once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description to head over to Cars and
how much that went
Bids
for
the live auction for this 300 SL, where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. All right, I'm going to start the quirks and features of this car by first giving a general overview of this Mercedes-Benz SL and what makes this one so special. So this version of the SL is referred to as the R129 model. That was the chassis code for this car, and it's the 4th generation of Mercedes SL. Everybody knows the 1st generation is the famous Gullwing. Well, this is the 4th gen model. It was sold from 1990 all the way to 2002. And this 1991 model is obviously a pretty early car. Now, given this SL's long production run, as you can imagine, some changes and improvements went into this car over the span of its production run. And as a result, later versions of this SL are considered to be better. They're the ones that people want. In fact, I reviewed a very late production R129 a couple of years ago. Amazing car. Everybody prefers the later cars with one exception. From 1990 to 1993, Mercedes-Benz offered this SL with a manual transmission. Only 4 model years you could get the manual right at the start of production, and this car has it. And of course, as you can imagine, it is tremendously rare. Only 4 years, and apparently in the 1991 model year, Mercedes only sold 240 of these total with the manual. So you figure a couple other years, and it probably lost popularity as it went on. So maybe there's only a few hundred manual SLs originally built, let alone those that have survived. It's incredibly uncommon. Now, unfortunately, the drawback is just as you might expect. Like in a lot of other cars, Mercedes-Benz only offered the manual transmission in the base model with the base engine, only in the 300 SL. You could never get the manual with a V8 or a V12 in this car. But it wasn't really so bad. The 300 SL, this car used a 3-liter 6-cylinder with about 230 horsepower. Not a massive number, but this SL is also a lot smaller and lighter and less complex than modern cars, and so it didn't need that much power. Plus, it had a manual transmission. Now, you might be wondering why Mercedes offered the SL with a stick shift. It seems so far from anything we could imagine the SL being today, but it was really this version of the SL where it really started to make the transition from a somewhat sporty car to a luxury cruiser. Mercedes dropped the manual on this car after the '93 model year, and they added a V12 instead. They took the whole car more upmarket, more luxury focused, more expensive, which kind of turned it into the old people cruiser that we know today. Now, it's worth pointing out that this was not the last Mercedes-Benz offered with a manual transmission. In fact, Mercedes continued to offer 3 pedals in the C-Class and the SLK for many more years, but even that ended a long time ago, and the concept of a relatively modern Mercedes-Benz with a manual transmission is still a surprise, but this car had it. By the way, one interesting quirk while I'm up here, in the engine bay, you can see there is just so much room left over by this 6-cylinder engine. Mercedes clearly designed this car with a V8 in mind, and probably even they were considering that a V12 may go in it later. The 3-liter 6-cylinder was clearly not intended to take up this car's entire engine bay. It was clearly not the top offering, and that's made very clear when you pop the hood. But anyway, next up, let's move on to the rest of this SL's quirks and features. And as you can imagine, there are quite a few, as this is a flagship luxury model from 30 years ago. Starting with the weird lock and unlock process. This car came from before the days of keyless entry. So you had to walk up to the car and manually unlock it with a key. And when you do that, a green light flashes to let you know that you've just unlocked the car. You can see it there on the door handle, flashing to let you know the doors are unlocked. If you want to lock the doors, you twist the key the other way, and then a red light flashes to let you know that you've just locked the doors. And it does this over on the passenger side as well. Lock and unlock with these different colored lights to let you know, sort of a predecessor to the turn signal flash that modern cars do when you lock or unlock them. Now, when you climb inside to the SL, you're also confronted by an interesting situation with the locks. This is the door lock switch, and you operate it almost like cocking a gun. You push it down and then the doors are locked, and that locks both doors, driver and passenger. Now, interestingly, you cannot unlock the doors using that switch. Instead, the switch is connected to the door handle, and the only way to unlock them is to pull on the door handle. That opens the door and unlocks the doors simultaneously. Certainly an odd system, but that's what they did. And speaking of interesting locks on this door panel, this armrest isn't just an armrest. In fact, it's a lid that lifts up. You can lift it up and then you can put storage in the door pocket. And the weird thing here is this storage compartment locks with the doors. When you lock the doors, you can see this little pin here would also lock along with the doors in order to lock this storage compartment closed. Lockable door panel storage, not something you see very often, but there's a reason that they did it. This SL does not have a glove box. You can see over on the passenger side of the dashboard, it has an airbag instead. This was one of the first cars to have dual airbags, and back then, you kind of had to choose between an airbag or a glove box. They didn't really have space to do both. They didn't know how to integrate both. So this car didn't have a glove box, and it had those lockable door panels instead. It also had a lockable center console. You can lift the center console up and put stuff in it, and then you can lock it. Since this car has no glove box, they thought of other lockable storage solutions on the interior where you could put stuff that you might normally keep in your glove box. Now, beyond this storage stuff, a couple of other interesting storage items in this interior. One, in the center console, you have this roll top lid. You can roll it back and reveal a rather large storage area in there with a somewhat intricate cup holder. You push on this little tab, and then the cup holder unfolds itself, so you have a spot for your drinks. German cars in this era, not common to see cup holders, but a flagship luxury model like this, it makes sense. Now, the other interesting storage compartment is accessed with the push of this button in the center with an arrow pointing up. You press that, and then this lid can be lifted up, and there's a little bit of storage in there, but that was really not useful to anyone. The reason they had that is for cars that were equipped with the car phone. You had some car phone controls in this little compartment, but if you didn't have the car phone, you got a little bit of extra storage, I guess. Not that there was anything you could really put in there, maybe a few pens. Now, beyond all of this stuff, there are quite a few unusual controls in this car. As you might expect, it's an older luxury car. They had some different ideas 30 years ago. One good example is this switch here, which shows like an image of something and then an arrow. That puts up the roll bar. If you press it, you can see the roll bar behind the seats actually goes upwards and then locks into place. Or you could press it the other direction and then the roll bar goes down and also locks into place, but now down. The reason they did this is, well, for safety. You could drive around with the roll bar down and it looked cooler. The car just looks better with the full convertible top, sort of this roadster look. But
hey, all the new
if you wanted more safety and support in case of a rollover, you could put up the roll bar. So if you thought you were going to do some crazy high performance driving, maybe put the roll bar up in case you roll over. Otherwise, put it down.
Also watching Doug DeMuro videos.
It was lovely that they made you choose between safety and style. And speaking of things that go up in this car, as you can imagine, the roof also goes up. It's a fully automated power top, which is pretty impressive for a car from the early 1990s, and it was controlled with this switch here, which is actually in the shape of a top. Mercedes did this on all their convertibles in this era, and I have always loved how this switch looked. You can see the back window, the side windows, so it was pretty clear which direction you had to press it to make it go up or down. You push it forward to put the top up, and you can see the top in motion doing its thing. Now, one interesting thing about the top in this car is the operation is rather loud. This is how it came from the factory. A power top was a new thing, and they didn't know how to make everything seamless and quiet. And so there are some noises from hydraulics with stuff locking and clicking and snapping into place. Take a listen to the top going down.
I like these quick website only clicks. Click ads, not the 30-second ads. That is so much work. It seems complicated.
But anyway, beyond the roof and the roll bar, there are many other unusual controls in this car. For example, the climate vents. In your car, you have a little slider under each climate vent to position what direction it's blowing. In this car, all of the sliders were in the center, even for the climate vents on the side. You'd think it would be way easier to just put the slider directly under the corresponding climate vent, but that's not what they did. You adjusted it all in the middle, even for the side vent. And how about this? There's a lumbar support control on the side of the seat. It's a little wheel dial, but instead of having numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it has lowercase letters, A through E, and most interesting, C is the normal default setting. So C in the middle, like a piece of music, and middle C on a piano, that is the lumbar support instead of 1 through 5 like every other car would have had. Also, a little unusual in this car is the climate controls, which you can see here. A couple strange things. For one, it was clear they wanted you to use the automatic mode because that button is about 4 times the size of any other button on this panel. They really wanted you to do that. Also weird is how you turn it off. There's not an off button or a dial you just turn all the way down. Instead, a button marked 0. In other words, you want 0 climate control. You press that, and that was the off button. In this car, even the manual transmission is weird. The famed R129 SL manual, 2 odd things. Number one, it had a foot-mounted parking brake, meaning you have 4 pedals in this car: the accelerator, the brake, the clutch, and the parking brake, and you didn't want to accidentally press the parking brake when you were going for the clutch. That would have been catastrophic. The other weird thing about this manual, it's a dog leg, and that means that first is down and to the left instead of up and to the left like in basically every other car. It also means your 1-2 upshift requires you to go up and to the right to get into second, and reverse is located up and to the left where first gear is in virtually every other car. Now fortunately you won't accidentally go into reverse when you're going for first because you have to lift the gear lever up, that's the lockout, to get it into reverse. But it's still an unusual pattern pattern, a dogleg gear lever. Now, other Mercedes-Benz models from this era also had the dogleg. I drove a 190e 2.316 that had the same pattern. And there were other cars that did this too. The F40 and other Ferraris had a dogleg. There was some theory behind it, including that the 2-3 upshift, which is more important when you're doing performance driving than 1-2, that was directly in a line. And so that was a reason why some did the dogleg. But pretty much everybody eventually abandoned it, and so driving it is a little disconcerting today. The gears are in a different place than you might expect. By the way, one other interesting quirk in this interior is the warning chime situation. Mercedes-Benz models from this era had the worst warning chimes of any vehicle. You leave the lights on and this is what you get.
Yeah, terrible.
Admittedly, you will never leave the lights on with that warning chime, but you are assaulted in your ears by how awful it is. That was the chimes in a lot of these 90s Mercedes. Now, one other interesting item worth noting in the interior, this car doesn't have back seats. In fact, the vast majority of SL models weren't offered with back seats, and this car continued that trend, although you do have a space back here where you can put stuff, storage, small bags, that adds to the practicality of this interior. And of course, if you run out of space up there, you can also use the trunk. Nothing particularly unusual about this trunk, but it's here, and it's got storage space if you want to put stuff in it. Also worth pointing out, in the trunk of this particular SL, I have discovered the original maintenance booklet that comes with these cars, and you were supposed to like stamp it or get it ripped off at the dealer every time you did maintenance, and you can see this car had a lot of these stamps. It's cool to see all these in-period services that were documented for this car. Now, the only really interesting or unusual thing about the trunk is how you open it. There's no trunk latch like in modern cars. Cars from this era generally didn't have that. Instead, to open the trunk, you had to use the key. You would walk up to the back of the car, this keyhole here, stick the key in, push it, and then the trunk would unlatch and you could open it. Now, the unusual thing about this trunk procedure is that this keyhole has more functions than just that. If you walked up, stuck the key in it, and twisted, you could lock the trunk and all the doors. It served as an extra exterior door lock, and you can see the little red light flashing to let you know that all the doors are locked, just like I showed you before on the door handle. And of course, you can do it the other way and unlock all the doors from the trunk as well. So you had basically an extra lock and unlock position in the back of the car. Now, one other interesting thing worth pointing out about this car is the name, 300 SL, just like the gull wing. One interesting thing about Mercedes-Benz models from this era and from earlier is that Mercedes used to lead its model names with the number, and then the letters came after that. The number referred to the engine size. In this case, 300 is a 3-liter 6-cylinder, and of course, SL was the model. But this got to be a little confusing because Mercedes would have a bunch of cars that had 300 as the first part of their name, even though they were totally unrelated. One would be a large sedan, the 300 SEL, then another would be a convertible, the 300 SL, and then there would be another sedan, the 300E, and it didn't really make sense why they were all the 300. So, for the 1994 model year, Mercedes-Benz flipped things. The 500 SL became the SL 500. The 300 SL also got a larger engine and became the SL 320. The 400E became the E 420, etc., etc. The letters
Let's try this in. It's so freaking close
later,
to max.
And this continues to this day. And it was the 94 model year where that change was made, and that's one of the ways you can tell that this car was pre-94. And next up, we move back up to the front of this SL, where there are a couple of interesting quirks, starting with the headlight wipers. You can see this car has little wipers, like windshield wipers, on its headlights, which was a very unusual decision.
I think I'm almost close to golding this.
Mercedes-Benz was experimenting with a lot of new stuff, and some of it would stick, like dual airbags, and some of it wouldn't, like headlight wipers. The way these worked was you were driving along at night with the headlights headlights on,
B.
and if you had your regular windshield wiper on, the headlight wipers would wipe like
B-class,
every
come on,
minute
man.
or every
Where
30
is it?
seconds or some amount of time.
I
It
missed
wasn't just this car that had them. Some other Mercedes-Benz
Where is
models
it?
had them. A
It's
few
red,
Volvos
right?
did too, and maybe some other cars, but obviously they didn't catch on, and they're not
Yes.
around today.
Yes.
But headlight
Gold.
wipers were an idea Mercedes was kicking around in this era.
Let's
now,
do
one
it.
interesting thing is
Dun, dun, dun,
the
dun, dun.
actual windshield only has one
hate this
wiper. The
format here.
giant
Here we
mono
go,
wiper
boom.
wipes the windshield
I got
pretty well,
8,000.
goes across
There
the
it is.
entire thing, but just one for the whole windshield
There it
and
is.
two for the headlights. Another interesting thing up front in this car is the way the hood release comes out. To unlatch
Okay, here we
the
go.
hood,
Let's
you
do
go into the
this.
driver
Let's gold
footwell
it.
and pull on this latch like basically every other car. But
Yeah,
then
I've been
the
playing this
release
game as well. This
itself
is an
comes
awesome
out of the
game. Let's
bottom
do
of the
this.
Mercedes-Benz
You know, I love
Star.
you can stop at any time.
Pretty
You're not so
clever
complicated. It's
positioning.
not
You
so
reach in there,
complicated.
pull
It
the hood
plays
latch,
well
unlatch
with
it,
a few
and
buttons.
then you can open it up.
And that's
from
it.
there.
All right, here it
A couple
is.
other interesting points
Let's
with this
gold
car.
it
For
up.
one thing, the two-tone
Dun, dun,
paint
dun,
job. You can see
dun.
that this car is kind of a dark
Here it
gray on
is.
top and a light gray on the bottom. Only
Maximum
the early R129
level
SL models had the
achieved.
two-tone paint job, but a lot of cars had more contrasting
That's
colors
it.
than this. They would be like red
That's
on the
it.
top and gray on the bottom, or green or blue on the top.
We'll take it
But
out for a
this
spin
car
in
is
MP
more
right now.
subdued. Mercedes-Benz went with a
We're in that
single
class.
color for
It's gonna be
later
terrible.
SL models.
It's gonna be really
also
bad.
worth pointing
But
out,
let's
even
try
though
it.
this car is a soft top convertible, it came from the factory with a body-colored hardtop.
Oh, God.
This car still
Well,
has
now I got a maxed-
its body-colored hardtop.
I got a gold
and
max
getting it on is kind of a
Ferrari
chore. It's a
in B class.
multi-person
I don't
job.
think
You
I've
gotta
had
lift
that
it into
before, so
perfect
now I can
place,
use that in the club
and then
class
you could
races
drive
for
around
extra
the
points.
hardtop. Mercedes didn't intend for you to do this very frequently. Maybe only twice a year you would take the hardtop off in the spring as it got warm, and you would maybe put it back on in the fall as it cooled down again, and you would just store it otherwise because it was kind of a pain. Now, interestingly, Mercedes-Benz offered to SL owners of this era
We'll turn
a
that down
system that
just
you
a
could
smidgen.
mount on the ceiling of your garage, and it would keep the hardtop in place. And then
Nice.
if you wanted to put the hardtop on your car, you would drive right under the ceiling-mounted hardtop holder, and you could easily lower it onto your car to make that process easier. When you were done, you could use the system to raise it back up off your car and keep it positioned directly above your car on your garage ceiling. I have to imagine all of these systems are now gone as these cars have gotten older, people have sold them, they've
Yeah, but you could
uninstalled
build your
those
own.
systems from their garage, but they existed at the time, a
And I
way
bet you
to
there's a
get
manual.
the hardtop on your car more easily.
you can
Now, of
reconstruct
course,
it,
the SL
3D
model
print it.
after this, which came out in 2003, had a power retractable hardtop, which solved that problem entirely because you got both a convertible and a hardtop without any unnecessary and annoying
can't turn with this
manual
thing. Oh my
hardtop.
God, this is so
All
bad.
right, driving a manual R129
I mean, this is a car, though. It's really
SL.
critical
It
to
is
the game.
so
I mean, you can't get
weird
through
to me
your
to look
career
down
and
at
stuff
this
without
steering
this
wheel
game,
and this
without this
dashboard
car,
and have
this
3
48.
pedals. This is the
It
same
is one of my
steering wheel and a
favorite
lot of the
cars,
same
but it's like-
controls I have in my G-Wagon, which is obviously an automatic, but I've also reviewed a ton of late 80s and early 90s
just
Mercedes-Benz
worthless.
models. All
Well,
of
it's not
which are
worthless,
always
actually. It's
automatic.
worth
And here I am
for special events,
driving
basically.
one with 3 pedals. It just like doesn't compute. I'm like doing something
But
with my
MP, no
feet
way.
and my hands that my brain doesn't understand.
Especially
it's
on
so
a course
funny.
like Paris,
so
which
let's
I've
talk, I
only
mean, obviously
played
the
for
thing
less
that
than 8
everybody's going to be
hours.
interested in is the manual transmission and the driving experience and how that changes it. A lot of people out there have driven R129 SLs or have been around them. Your uncle had one or a neighbor had one or whatever, but no one's ever seen a stick shift one. So what's that like? The answer is it drives like how a Mercedes-Benz would make a manual transmission, which is to say
Clunky.
it's like top quality. Like the clutch
Okay.
is smooth and not stiff, but it provides good feedback, but there's no like kink. It's not annoying, but it's also not like this quick shifting thing. Like it's a long travel, like you'd expect from maybe an old school vehicle with 3 pedals. The shifter itself, again, good quality, but also again, not exactly the sportiest thing. Like you move it into gear and it
Well,
does
the
what it
488
needs to do,
celebration
but it's
of
not like a
goldness.
short shifter with like really
It's over.
tight gates or anything like that.
No more,
Like it feels like an old
170
school
cars,
manual
holy moly,
transmission.
I'm not there
The
yet.
interesting thing is driving a car that feels like an early 90s Mercedes-Benz that has 3 pedals.
Of course, I
because
only
these
really
cars
just
are
buy
known
the,
for sort of a feeling of weight
Legend Pass and the
heaviness.
multiplayer
Everybody
pass
calls them
now,
bank
but
vault cars.
that's
it
it.
does. They
Not
always
a,
felt like that, and this one does too. Everything is very very well built. Nothing creaks, nothing rattles.
I'm not
Everything
collecting
is, you know,
I'm not
the
really
steering
into
is
collecting
heavy,
the cars,
feel
especially
of the
these
car
key
is
cars,
heavy,
you know,
and
it's so
driving
much
that
work.
with a manual
Again, I
transmission
like
just
playing
doesn't
this game
seem to
whenever I
make all
feel
that
like
much
it.
sense. Like
I
this
don't
car
want to be pressured
shouldn't
into
have 3 pedals.
missing
But
a
the cool
Grand
thing about this
Prix
car,
or
and the
trying
thing
to
that
get
I
some
love is it
times.
adds an
You'll see, I don't
excitement
really,
factor to this SL
I
that
don't
other
really
ones
care
don't really
about
have.
these.
Yes, it is the least
Going
powerful
so
engine,
far.
but
I
it's
used to care.
230
Like I used to,
horsepower, and you got a
like,
manual to
at the
liven
beginning
things
when
up
this
a
car
bit.
came out,
And I think
especially
that
after
the thing
playing
that
Asphalt
everybody
8 for so
loves about
long,
these
you know.
SLs is like the way they
When this
look,
came out,
the way they
I was like,
feel.
whoa,
This
dude, I
era
gotta
of
keep pushing.
Mercedes-Benz before quality kind of took a dive
And grinding
in
it
the
out,
late 90s, early
but now-
2000s. But then
Well, also
people
now I
can't
have a
really
healthy
square
garage
up
that
with
I
the
can
fact
use
that it's
to
also
earn
kind of a
this
dull
way
car to
by
drive.
playing,
The SL500, the
which is the
SL600,
preferred
they're not,
way of
they were cruisers.
earning.
But here's a car that gives
Here's my
you
gold
kind of the best of
Huracan.
all
This thing
worlds.
is a
It brings
beast.
the SL's
incredibly
look
awesome.
and feel
Pretty much
in with a
unstoppable
manual,
in
which
MP until
definitely
you get
does
the Legend.
enhance like the feel and the driving experience. Now, one interesting
I could
thing,
ride-
it
I could
doesn't
literally
feel like
drive
there's
this
a lot
car
of
to
low
Legend League right
power
now.
in this car. First gear doesn't feel like you get going and there's no like bouncing off the line. It's sort of a
Well, I don't know, this
slow
season maybe
pull
not.
off the line, like you might expect from
Last season.
Mercedes-Benz from this era. It just kind of
Ghost.
brings all of the usual Mercedes stuff, except now it has 3 pedals.
Still learning this track,
Four,
so.
looking down,
Oh, this
because
is a
now it's
great
weird.
thing here, though.
I can drive a
You
dog
gotta
leg.
do
I've
this.
driven a bunch, and it's not that
Ugh,
weird for
I
me,
messed
but
it up,
getting
but-
into the higher gears
then you can roll right
is
into
where
this
I'm like, all
full
right, am I in 5th? Am I in 4th? I don't
nitro,
really get it. I don't want to say that
and
this
then
car is like
smooth.
lively and
Man, I
super
hope I get that
fun
track
and
again.
thrilling
That was a nice
because
one.
that's not how I would put it. But I don't think that people who are buying this car are necessarily thinking that's what they're going to get. I think that they're thinking, hey, it's a Mercedes from this era. It's a cruiser car. That's what these are for.
Yeah,
But
Paris
it has
is
a
all right
manual, which
for,
makes things more
you know,
fun,
for the
and it
little-
certainly does. It is interesting.
This is all
Even
gonna
when
be in
you
Paris,
floor it
right?
in this
So
car
this
and
will
get
be good.
all the way to the top of the red
Oh,
line.
and then the Carrera,
it never
that'll be good
loses
here
its
too.
Mercedes.
Actually,
it never
Paris,
feels
I think,
like
for B
fast
class
and
entirely,
let's
like
go
all
have
of B
some
class, I
fun.
think,
It never feels too
is gonna
loud.
be a nice
It never
fun.
feels too
The upper B
frenetic.
class would be a nice
It still
fun
feels
track.
like the Mercedes Benz
Maybe not for like
that
the
it
high speed
is.
stuff like Apollo
And I
N
think that that's so
or the
interesting.
F1
Even when
LM is probably gonna
Mercedes makes
suck.
a manual 2-door roadster, it still feels like a Mercedes.
Well,
Benz,
you know
like
what? There's
a
I'm going to
sturdy,
disagree with you on Paris.
well-constructed
I've seen a
car
couple of
first and
tracks.
foremost,
There's
and
some odd
maybe
ones.
you can
Play the
have some
Legend
fun on
Pass
the
in the
fringes
events,
later.
and the
So
other one that's in the daily events, and they're
1991
both
Mercedes-Benz 300 SL
weird
with
tracks.
a manual
I mean, I don't know. There's some
transmission.
definite.
It's
What,
weird
there's
to
a subterranean
drive
part.
any manual Mercedes, but
We'll play one here in a sec.
SL, it just doesn't feel right, but it exists, and you can buy it
I already played
on
those in my
cars
earlier
and
session.
bids. Anyway, now it's time to give this manual SL a Doug score. And the Doug score is here, 46 out
This is
of
a nice
100,
shortcut
which
right
places
here.
the 300 SL manual pretty predictably in
that
this
was supposed to
spot
be a shockwave.
against some sort of similar cars. Obviously, the manual 300 SL doesn't beat out contemporaries like the FD Mazda RX-7 or the original Dodge Viper, but it easily beats the car I've reviewed that's the closest competitor, the
late on that
1988
turn.
Jaguar XJS. The manual 300
the
SL
best
was a quirky
driver in
version
the
of a
world.
very desirable car, and I'm glad I got to check
I think it's
out
because
one
I
of the
just
rare
switch
few in
cars like,
existence.
constantly. I don't have my 5 cars that I play. And you can get the timings and the turns and the radiuses. Early in my early session, I finally fucking got a key for the Volkswagen. And I was 11th place in Tier 2 though, so they award a lot of awards. So I had 8 key packs and I got one this morning. I think I clipped it.
Fully electric
You can watch it in the
luxury
clips.
family SUV. The EX90 comes
I don't wanna
standard
watch
with
this one.
3-row
Let's see.
seating
What
and
else do we have,
fully
Douglas?
electric powertrains. And today, I'm going to take you on a thorough tour of this prototype EX90 and show you all of its quirks and features, so you have a pretty good idea of what to expect when the production EX90 comes out soon. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction
just bought a
website for
Carrera
cool
GT.
cars from the modern
Crazy.
era with free listings. You can list your cool car for free.
Oh, let's watch the
and
Chevy movie.
This is a 1987 Chevy Blazer, and it's an old school SUV. In fact, it's an SUV from the days before anybody called it an SUV. This was a 4-wheeler, and it certainly wasn't used by moms to transport children or dads to drive to soccer practice. Today, I'm going to review this 1987 Blazer and show you all the quirks and features of an SUV from the past. Before I get started, big news, this Chevy Blazer is currently for sale.
I think that there's
being
it's like
auctioned
Auckland.
live on
Paris is like
Cars
Auckland,
and Bids.
where there can be
This
some
has a
really
cool
fast ones,
two-tone paint job,
and there's some really
four-wheel
twisty
drive,
ones
a
too.
manual
And it's
transmission,
like,
and
I
a
think all the
big
tracks are going to be
V8,
like that,
and
where you're
it could be
even
yours.
some of
So,
those
once you
crazy
finish
tracks that they
watching
make
this
for
video,
special
click
events.
the link in the description to head over to Cars
All the
and
brand
Bids
new
for a
tracks have all
live
kinds of
auction for
weird
this
hidden
Blazer, where you can bid
versions
on
that
it
they're going to
and
start
buy it
using, I'm sure.
only on Cars and Bids.
Also trying to figure out like the hitboxes of the sides of the buildings, you know, and stuff you can fly over.
All right, time for the
Stuff you
quirks
can't.
and features of the Blazer, and I want to start by showing you just how different this is from a modern
was supposed to be
SUV.
shocking,
Even though it's only 25 years old, they're still using the Blazer name, doesn't seem that long ago. It is a totally different vehicle from what you
Gotta
think
turn
of
earlier
as
on
an
that one.
SUV today. And
It's the
probably
same
the best
fucking
way to
thing that I did
illustrate that
before.
is
That's the
opening
same
the
thing that
tailgate.
happened.
In your modern crossover, you walk up to the back of the car, press a button, and the tailgate beeps a couple times and then automatically opens. In this, the process is a little more challenging. There is no exterior handle to open the tailgate. Looks like there's one, this chrome piece here, but that is in fact not a handle. Instead, you pull it out and it becomes a giant lever that you use to roll down the rear window. Manually, turn after turn after turn, and then the rear window is down. Now, at that point, you have access to the cargo area because the back window is down, but if you have something heavy and you don't want to lift it quite that high, there's still another step. For that, you have to reach inside the tailgate. There's a latch in here. You pull on it, and then you can let down the tailgate. And by the way, it is tremendously heavy. Like, a very, very, very heavy piece.
I think I should have turned
Good
left
luck
there.
opening this if you're a child or if you're elderly or if you have a
Since this isn't
grocery
a ghost
bag in
season,
one arm.
the
And
more
of
we get
course,
away
to
from
close up
everybody, the
everything, guess what? You gotta go through it all again. You put your stuff in the back, then you, lift that massive piece and then roll up the back window again manually. And then once it's done, you snap the lever back into place and you're good. A far cry from a button and an automatic tailgate. And of course, there is far more to distinguish this from a modern crossover.
Here we
And
go.
a fantastic
I
example
missed it.
is how
Damn
you
it.
activate the four-wheel drive system. In your Toyota RAV4, you're driving along in two-wheel drive until the system detects that you're slipping on ice or mud or whatever, and then the
P1.
sensors activate and the system instantly springs the rear wheels to life in order to give you more traction. Not the
41,
case
that's
here.
insane.
If you want to go into four-wheel drive in your Blazer, you actually have to get out of the car and manually lock the front hubs. It locks them to the drivetrain, and you have to do this on both sides, driver and passenger in the front, because it's rear-wheel drive until you do that. Once you have gotten out, locked the front hubs manually, and then gotten back in, you can shift into four-wheel drive, and then you're actually in four-wheel drive. Not exactly the most convenient thing if it's the middle of a snowstorm or you're stuck in the mud, you gotta go get dirty, cold, whatever, just to put your car in four-wheel drive. But that's how it was. And there's more distinctions between this old school Blazer and modern SUVs and crossovers. A big one is the fact that when this generation of Blazer came out, the body stopped at the top of the windshield. That was the end of the body. You can see here an earlier Blazer with just the windshield, and that was it. Of course, these were sold with a roof, but it was a giant removable panel that went from the top of the windshield all the way through to the back of the car. The problem was there were leaking issues because the top wasn't actually part of the vehicle itself. And so, for the 1976 model year, a major change was made to the Blazer wherein the front part got a cab, an actual roof integrated into the body of the vehicle. Worth pointing out, it was still only over the front seats. You can see this scene here is where the actual vehicle body and the still removable top meet, but the removable part was only over the back seats, and now it wasn't leaking over the front seat occupants. That's not something you get in your regular Honda CR-V.
Yeah, see, this is one of those fast
in the
tracks
middle
right
of the
here.
model cycle
Fast
to add
Paris.
a roof. And by the way, yes, the rear panel is still removable, even in this Blazer model, but it's quite a job. It's a massive piece, as you can see, with windows in it, and it's absolutely huge. It's a multi-person job to get it off there, but you can remove it if you want open-air Blazer motor. And next up, we climb inside, where you'll find still more considerable differences from today's SUVs and crossovers, starting with the transmission. This has a manual transmission, which is already a pretty big difference, but here, it's a 4-speed manual. And actually, it's even crazier than that, because the first forward gear is actually a low gear that you'd probably use in off-roading situations if you're stuck or trying to tow something. So there's really only 3 speeds that you're going to be used driving around town. A 3-speed manual in an SUV. It is a far cry from today's 10-speed automatics. And then there's the rest of the stuff in here. Like, for example, you have 2 giant gauges in the gauge cluster, but even though this has a manual transmission, neither of them is a tachometer. You have a speedometer, as you can see over on one side. The other giant gauge is a fuel gauge, a massive fuel gauge. Doesn't really make sense why it's so big, but it is. And speaking of things that don't make sense why they're so big, how about the warning lights, which are over off to the left? And they too are huge. See, instead of a little indication like you have in your gauge cluster, there's a massive bright bulb staring at you in case one of these things is going wrong. Seems like a little overkill. And next up, another old school feature of the old school Blazer. You look up and you see no headliner, just painted metal. You don't have some nice Alcantara or even cloth piece up here, just painted metal. And in terms of other stuff they left off, how about a center console? It seems like at least that would have made it into this car, but it didn't. No storage area in here, no armrest even to rest your arm on a long drive. You don't even get cup holders, which I suspect people buying this would have wanted. Now, there is a cutout in the dashboard, as you can see here, which you're thinking, well, maybe that's a cup holder, but no. It's an ashtray, because you got to think about the era when this vehicle came out. They prioritized ashtray over cup holder or even armrest. Now, with all that said, one big advantage this old school Blazer has over modern vehicles is this cool swiveling front window. I love these windows. You open it up, it provides significant airflow into the interior. Automakers have completely ditched them, and it is so sad because these were so fantastic. You could get such a nice breeze with this windows, but modern cars don't have them. Speaking of cooling down in this Blazer, worth pointing out, it has air conditioning from the factory. That was a nice touch, and it would have been a pretty luxurious feeling thing in an SUV from this era to have factory AC. And speaking of the center control stack area, directly below that AC, you can see an old school radio, except it isn't actually old school. This is a modern Bluetooth stereo that looks like an old school radio, so it fits perfectly within the dashboard and the feel of this car. But actually, you can hook up a Bluetooth device to it and play your music from Spotify or whatever, and that is a really cool idea. I love to see these old school radios fitting into the style of the car, but bringing you more modern tech. And next up, we move on to the back of the old school Blazer, the back seat, which, as you can imagine, is pretty sparse. There's not a lot going on back here. In fact, you can clearly see it's basically just a bench with some seat belts. And that's it. There's no climate vents, there's no climate controls, the windows don't roll down back here, there's no screens, there's no storage pockets, there's no cup holders, there's no panoramic sunroof, there's no rear touch screen mounted on the back of the front seats. There's a bench and there's seat belts. You sat back there and you liked it. Worth pointing out, there is one nice luxury in back. Ashtrays on both sides, of course. They don't have cup holders, but they have ashtrays. Also kind of funny to see ashtrays in there, considering the rear windows don't roll down, like I said. So you'd be smoking in kind of an enclosed compartment in the back. But if you had to smoke, you had to smoke in the 80s in the back of a Blazer. And of course, children would sit back here in this era, and they didn't have any devices to look at or screens or charge ports. They simply sat back here and didn't complain until they got in an accident, because there's no headrest or head support at all, and their necks would probably go flying. Safety wasn't a major priority in this era. It was just pretty Spartan. Now, one other cool thing that I like inside this old school Blazer is this badge over on the passenger side that says Custom Deluxe. The badging was always cool, and the naming that they used, like Custom Deluxe, made you feel like you were buying something kind of special. And in terms
Custom
of badging,
Deluxe.
the cool badging continues on the outside, where you have this big blocky badge
Man.
that I think really adds
It'd be
character
nice to get.
these
I think
old
this
school
one was on
blazers.
sale.
Now, there was a
yeah?
period where these
It was.
badges
I wanna
weren't
see
all
how
that
much-
stylish,
4
and people
months ago, so
removed
it's
them. They called it a
definitely sold.
shaved look with no badges. These
wanna
days,
see how much
enthusiasts
it
buying
went
these
for.
trucks love these badges
I'd love
because they're
something like
really
that.
representative of this blazer and its era. You got K5 on top. That was like the model code, then blazer in giant print, and then this little design, which I never understood. Is that a sun? Is it a seashell? Regardless, why is it there? But it is, and that was kind of a little blazer touch. And next up, we move under the hood, where you'll find another big change compared to modern crossovers and SUVs, a big change compared to modern vehicles in general, and that would be a big V8. This is a 5-liter V8, and it is old school. It's fuel injected, but it only makes 170 horsepower, and it does that while probably getting something like 9 miles per gallon. So you don't get good performance, and you
That's the
don't
one
get
thing.
good fuel economy. It's
Fuel
kind of the
economy
worst of
is so
all
bad.
worlds, but that's how SUVs and trucks were back then, with these big old inefficient V8s. And this Blazer is no different. It's part of the charm of an old school SUV. And also up front, another throwback to the old school era, this massive vertical grille. Modern cars
Oh,
have these
shit.
sloping front end designs to make pedestrian impacts less severe. Not this thing. It is a vertical grille, a 90-degree right angle with the hood, and to top it all off, there's a huge chrome metal bumper in front. There was no diminishing the severity of an impact with a pedestrian if you had an old school Blazer. Now, this grille design is kind of an icon in the old Chevy truck world. The Blazer used it, obviously. The pickup trucks used it. The Suburban used it. This old square grille was very famous for Chevys from this period. And on the Blazer, that meant
Hey, new followers,
1973
new
to
viewers
1991.
on all
That's
the
how long
platforms.
this generation of Blazer was
We're
sold
playing
for
Paris.
almost 20 years
We're
before it was
playing
finally
B-class
redesigned,
Paris
and then
MP.
eventually it became
Watching
the
Doug
Tahoe
DeMuro.
when families started buying SUVs and they realized people wanted 4 doors. Now, there was also
Suggest
a
your
GMC
cars
version
and I'll
of this
drive them.
Blazer
Got
that was
almost
called
all
the
of them.
Jimmy. And interestingly, Jimmy was a nickname for GM.
Drop it in the
General
chat.
Motors. If you said it fast, it's like GM,
Excuse
Jim, Jimmy. They did this because the supposed story of how the Jeep name came to be is similar. Jeeps were used in the military as general purpose vehicles, or GP, which was shortened to Jeep. And so GM figured GM, Jim, Jimmy, and that's how they got the name for that vehicle. And by the way, speaking of military, there was also a military application of this Blazer. You can see it here. It was massive, it was no frills, and it was powered by a diesel engine. These were mainly used for like troop transport around military bases, that sort of thing. Not really forward combat like an armored Humvee, but they were around this Blazer as a military vehicle. Now, one other interesting thing in the history of this Blazer, there was also a smaller model, also called the Blazer, that had nothing to do with this one. It was called the S10 Blazer. This was the K5 Blazer, but if you didn't know those model designations, you just knew that GM was selling 2 different Blazer models that were completely different. And this happened for a long time, all throughout the 80s and early 90s. Eventually, this Blazer was canceled, became the
All right,
Tahoe,
hitbox
and
is
the
terrible
other
in that
Blazer
corner.
lived on for a lot longer, and now it's back in the form of a little crossover that has revived the Blazer name. All right, driving the K5 Blazer. And before I do,
Lame.
thank you to Garage
right.
Collective here in San Diego for letting me use their space to film. Garage Collective is like a cool car membership organization with cool events and also car storage. And you can also check out Garage Collective in the link below. Thank you again to Garage Collective for the space. I have reviewed on my channel a old school Bronco, a 96 Bronco, and a Dodge Ram Charger, but never a big full-size Blazer. So here we go. All right, so first thing about this vehicle, and one of the coolest things, one of the reasons it's so popular, the seating position is just wonderful. You're above everybody, you're above everything, you're just feeling cool. I mean, I'm sitting here, there's a Hyundai Tucson in front of me, sort of standard modern crossover, and you're just like a tower. You're so far above him. That's kind of cool. Now, one thing that's immediately obvious the moment you get in this car, like I've been saying, everything else is so different and old school compared to modern vehicles. Boy, is that true with regards to the way it feels inside. It is an old truck. I mean, this generation of Blazer came out in '73, so this is an '87, and they went through '91, but it came out in '73. So you got to figure, this design is basically late '60s, early '70s stuff. and it feels like it. It is a lot of metal. It's a lot of creaks and rattles in here. Not as bad as I thought, but still, it's not like a modern car. And you have this incredibly loud engine. I'm going 45 miles an hour, and it's got to be turning 3,000-4,000 RPM, and I'm in top gear, which is, of course, third.
Yeah, this one's a really fast one.
It does not feel like a highway cruiser.
Area.
It does not feel like a modern, comfortable, smooth car. That's not what this was for. Like, in the 80s, in the 70s, people didn't buy them to do, like, long highway trips like people do now with SUVs. It just wasn't a thing. People bought these for like true four-wheel drive use. The military had them, police departments had them. People who lived up in mountain cabins had them. That was pretty much it. It wasn't like today where every other person has an SUV. Now, I don't want to make you think that it's uncomfortable. That's not really the goal here. It isn't uncomfortable. It's actually nice in here. You got a lot of space. Again, like I said, you're sitting up high, and it's pretty drivable. It's really no issue. I mean, you point the steering wheel, it goes. Obviously, it's slow to steer, slow to respond. There's a lot of body roll. All those things are no
let's see how much this thing went for.
Considering it's a full-size Blazer, I think everybody would have guessed. So the issue is more like acceleration is atrocious, and the car just feels like a big,
still a lot
thing. It's not like
of
the kind of thing you could possibly throw around. It doesn't feel like a car you would drive in the suburbs, because back in this era, it's just not what you did with SUVs. Now, one thing I will say, it is damn cool. Like, this is just a cool vehicle. And you even get that sense when you're inside it and driving it. Like, I'm reviewing the driving experience as if it's like something that you're considering buying and like driving, but truthfully for most people, it's gonna be like a second, third, fourth car. Like, it's something that they want to just kind of have some fun with, and it is that. It lets you have fun. I mean, it feels like an old school charming vehicle, and I love that, and I think that's what people are loving about these. These old Blazers, these old Broncos have all started to become desirable and surprisingly valuable, and I think a good chunk of the reason is it just puts a smile on your face. This is not an experience that a modern car has. Yes, it's creaky and rattly and loud, but that's kind of part of the enjoyment of it. The thing about this old school Blazer and old school SUVs in general, you know, I have a 97 Defender. It's not that much different from this. It doesn't feel quite as big, but it's the same kind of creaky, rattly, big V8 with no power kind of thing. And it's just that they're cool. They're just cool to drive around. You feel like you're going back in time, and it just feels so different from any modern rational vehicle. But parts are cheap, and it's kind of fun, and it's just a cool life experience, and that's why these are hot right now. And you get the two-tone paint and this like old school charm that you just can't really get anymore. And so that's the 1987 Chevy K5 Blazer. This is an interesting vehicle, and it certainly doesn't put the sport in sport utility vehicle. It feels like it's from a totally different era, but that's because it is, and that's the charm of an old school SUV. And it can be yours on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give the K5 Blazer a Doug score. And the Doug score is here, 38 out of 100, which puts it directly between the 1996 Ford Bronco I reviewed and the 1993 Dodge Ram Charger. Truthfully, these three vehicles are all pretty similar. The Bronco feels a bit newer than the Blazer, but it's not a huge difference compared to modern cars.
All right, so I'm going to pull out P4 on this. All three of these old school SUVs are massive, bulky, ridiculously inefficient, and ponderous to drive on the road. And they're all very cool and quickly gaining value and enthusiast interest. This is a 1993 Dodge Ram Charger, and it's an SUV from before SUVs were family crossovers with massaging seats and 14 screens to roll down the windows. Back in the day, SUVs were this: body on frame, huge V8, 4 miles per gallon, the Ram Charger, and today I'm going to review it. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era with free listings. You can list your cool car for free and auction it with no fees on Cars and Bids. And we've had some fantastic sales recently, including this Rivian R1T, which sold for $107. We'll watch this.
This is the new Porsche 911 GT2 RS, and it is the single craziest Porsche 911 ever made. Ever. And today, I'm gonna show you around it. I borrowed this GT2 RS from a viewer in the San Francisco Bay Area who runs a company called Savvy LLC that designs and engineers performance parts for the recent Porsche 911 GT3 models. They're currently focused on aero products with one set to launch early next year. You can check out Savvy LLC by clicking the link in the description below. I'm going to start with the basics. Now, the GT2 RS is objectively the craziest 911 ever, and here are some numbers that back up that claim. This car has 700 horsepower. It has 553 pound-feet of torque. The starting price is around $300,000. It's faster around the Nürburgring than the Porsche 918 Spyder. It'll do 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds, and it'll hit a top speed of 210 miles per hour. Porsche fanatics will take issue with me calling the GT2 RS crazier than the 911 GT1, which was essentially a road version of the Le Mans race car from the 1990s. But here's the thing, the GT2 RS has 170 more horsepower than the old 911 GT1. It's also quicker to 0 to 60, and it has a higher top speed. This thing is faster and more powerful than the road version of a Le Mans race car from 20 years ago. So today I'm going to show you around the GT2 RS, and I'm going to show you all of the interesting quirks and cool features of the craziest Porsche 911 ever made. Then I'm going to get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'm going to give it a Doug score. And for more of my thoughts on the GT2 RS, click the link below to visit autotrader.com/oversteer, where I've also compiled a list of the most interesting and unusual Porsche 911 models currently listed for sale on AutoTrader. Now I'm going to start up front, and specifically in the trunk, but before I get in there, I want to talk about the emblem. Now, this car is an all-out track weapon designed for the best track times possible, and so they saved weight everywhere they could, and that includes the emblem. Porsche didn't bother with metal emblems on this car. Instead, they went with decals, as they do for all of the GT3 RS type cars that are trying to save as much weight as possible. That probably saves 0.4 ounces, but it is kind of a cool story to tell. My car is so lightweight that it doesn't even have badges. Anyway, you open up the trunk and you are greeted by a couple of interesting items under here. I like the fact that everything in this car seems to be GT2 RS branded, including the car cover, but not just the car cover, that includes the bag the car cover came in. Even that bag doesn't just say 911, it says GT2 RS. But things get much crazier than that. How about the fact that there's this little cap here where you can add fluid, and even this cap says on it GT2 RS. They don't just use the same cap from the GT3 RS, this car has its own unique one. I also like the fact that this cap says on it, only distilled water. Why is that? Well, it's because your GT2 RS only drinks distilled water. Of course, it would never put up with that tap water swill that you drink. No, I'm just kidding. That's obviously where you add the coolant. Now, the other interesting thing under here is the fact that there is, under here, the 911 GT2 RS Halter Kennzeichen. This is actually the front license plate mount, but again, even this is specific to the GT2 RS. It's not just the 911 front license plate mount or the GT3, GT3 RS, GT2 RS mount.
Shit,
it's the Halter Kennzeichen that only goes to the GT2 RS. Now, another item that's branded GT2 RS in the front of this car is this front lip spoiler down here, which is the kind of thing that I have nightmares about because it is so incredibly low. It's like 3 inches off the ground. This is the kind of thing you damage on a parking curb basically every time you park. But it does have a huge GT2 RS logo across the front of it, so you know exactly what car you're in, and so do the people who come to the parking lot after you leave when they find this sitting on the ground. It is worth noting, though, that this car has an axle lifting system. You push a little button in the center console, and then the front axle will lift itself up so it can clear parking curbs and sort of steep driveways and other things that this car might have trouble clearing in its normal state with this, like, 3-inch ground clearance. Next up, our next interesting things are on the front fender of the car. I'm going to start with the fuel door.
C-Class,
It being up front isn't really all
4-star.
that unusual. All Porsche 911s have it up here. The unusual thing is when you open it up, you can see it is this beautiful silver fuel cap, and it says Porsche across the center. It has these rivets.
Donkiervort.
It also has turn to click written on it, both in English and in German. English is on the bottom upside down. German takes precedence on the top, and it says Drechen bis. Click. Anyway, the fuel cap is very cool. Not really in keeping with the lightweightness of the car, but it is a really neat look. Now, the other neat look on the outside of this car are these fender vents, which are absolutely massive. Fender vents have become a big trend in the car industry in the last 20 or so years, but no car does fender vents quite like the GT3 RS and the GT2 RS. They're these giant check marks. Now, the interesting thing about the fender vents is they're very functional. The whole idea is that it sends air sort of through the wheel arch and out up here, which provides a lot more front downforce. In other words, that's air like pushing down on the front of the car. This is really important in a car like the GT2 RS with the engine in back, because the front can start to feel very light, especially at the speeds this thing can go. So the more downforce you can get in front, the better, and that's why they have these massive air vents. Next up, we move on to the wing. Now, the wing on this car is just massive. These wings on these Porsche GT3, GT3 RS, GT2 cars have just gotten bigger and bigger over the years.
Owl.
But
How
this
close
is
am
the
I on
most
that?
hugely insane, massively ridiculous wing I have ever seen on a Porsche. It is so large, in fact, that they print Porsche on the top of the wing facing up, so that pilots can identify the GT2 RS from the air, along with other giant items like the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, the purpose of the wing is obvious. It provides incredible downforce at speed, and it is actually useful and functional and helpful, but it's also just totally crazy to see a wing like this on the back of a 911. Remember when 911s used to be subtle? Now, next up, we move under the hood, or the bonnet, or the engine cover, or whatever you want to call it, to see the engine. But before we do that, a couple things worth noting. One, this piece is incredibly heavy. Obviously, an engine cover is already kind of heavy. It's a piece of bodywork, but this has this massive wing on it, and so it's heavier than usual. When you put it up, something interesting happens. You put it up, and then it clicks into place using this tiny little red clicky mechanism over on the right. Most cars have hydraulics that keep this up, but again, to save weight, they decided not to do that. Instead, this entire heavy piece, and really it is heavy, is held up by this tiny little plastic clicky thing, which doesn't seem like it's enough, but it's holding it in place just fine, at least for now. Now, once you get into the engine compartment, you'll see you don't actually see the engine. That's true of a lot of the newer 911s. It's kind of underneath stuff, and you can't actually access it. Instead, all you get are a couple of spots where you can add fluids, and then two big fans back here. The one on the left says GT2, and the one on the right says RS. Now, when you go to close the engine compartment in your GT2 RS, you can't just slam it down, and that's where I think a lot of GT2 RS owners might get into trouble, because you're kind of used to just doing that. But in this car, the little plastic thing is in place, preventing you from doing it. So if you slam it, you're going to break the plastic thing. Instead, you have to kind of unlock the plastic thing, move it down, and then you can close the engine cover. One other really interesting item on the outside of the GT2 RS before we move inside.
Lethal Trout.
See this back glass back here? Yeah, this isn't glass. The rear window in this car is not glass. It's like plexiglass or something else in order to save weight. Same thing goes for the rear quarter windows, and when you tap them, you can hear that it doesn't sound like glass, as opposed to the front windows, which actually are glass and have the more traditional glass sound. Now, one drawback of this is that it means there can be no heating element that goes through it. So if you're driving your GT2 RS on a frosty morning and there's ice over your back window, well, too bad there's no heating coils so that you can defrost it. Now, next up, we move on to the interior, where there are several interesting and unusual items in the GT2 RS. I want to start with the fact that this car has the Weissach package. Weissach is Porsche's test track and development facility, and one thing that Porsche has started doing in recent years is offering a regular GT2 RS, or if you want to go completely all out, you can get the Weissach package for better performance, more aerodynamics, whatever it happens to be for each car. In this vehicle, it has Weissach RS written on the headrest, along with an image of the Weissach test test track itself. It also says Weissach RS on the dashboard. That way all your friends know that you have the Weissach package if they weren't already able to tell from the subtle little upgrades on the exterior of the car. Now, speaking of the dashboard, I just got to talk about the cup holders, because this car has the best cup holder design in the entire history of the car business. Okay, you look at the dashboard, there's no cup holders, but if you push this little carbon fiber bit, then it drops down and then you can extend the cup holders out. So you're thinking, well, but then that little carbon fiber bit has to stay down, it looks ugly. No, Porsche has little cuts in the carbon fiber piece that comes down that allows the cup holders to stay extended and lets you put the carbon fiber piece back up to make it look nice again. This is absolutely brilliant. The cup holders basically come out of nowhere. They're hidden, they're invisible, and that allows a crazy performance car like this to have two usable cup holders, which isn't something you can say for anything else. Take that, Huracan Performante. But anyway, back to weight savings for a second. I want to talk about the rear seats. A regular 911 has rear seats, although small ones. You could throw stuff back there or a little child or whatever. The GT2 RS has no rear seats. They took them out in order to save weight. Instead, you just kind of have little holes carpeted where the rear seats would have been, plus a center console in Alcantara back there that says GT2 RS on it, like so many things do on this car. And speaking of seats, the front seats, they aren't exactly plush. This car has manual sport seats, not multi-way power function heated seats like a lot of Porsche models do. And they are incredibly tight and incredibly narrow, and they are designed to keep you precisely in place on the racetrack. Another interesting weight savings item in this car is that Porsche has removed the regular door handles. This car doesn't have standard door handles. Instead, it has these little fabric cloth loops that you pull in order to get out of the car. Personally, I've always felt that this was kind of a stupid little gimmick, because right next to these cloth loops that probably saved 2 ounces, you have the power windows. If Porsche was really serious about weight savings, they would put in crank windows, but they know their customers won't stand for that. But they will stand for the little fabric door loops so that they can brag to everybody else about how far Porsche has gone to save weight in their GT2 RS. Now, next up, moving further into the interior, I want to talk about the steering wheel. As you can probably see, the steering wheel looks crazy. That's because this is a racing steering wheel. This is a modification that the owner of this car made. This car is otherwise almost completely stock, except for the steering wheel, and it has an exhaust. Now, when you put in a racing steering wheel like this, you lose the airbag, but the owner of this car, he's all about track use and that sort of thing, and he's like, airbag, I don't need any of that crap. And so it doesn't have one. Now, near the steering wheel, you can see on the turn signal stalk, you have the voice control icon. And I like the fact that the voice control icon has a picture of a human face speaking. And it's gender ambiguous. Could be a man, could be a woman, but it definitely has an ear. For some reason, that's the part of the face they decided to put in detail, the ear. Other than that, it's just a face speaking with little speaking lines coming out from it. Next up, moving on to some tech features in this car. In the gauge cluster, you have on the right a full color screen, which has a couple of interesting items. One, it shows a G-force meter, so you can see how many G's you're pulling on your GT2 RS. That's pretty common in performance cars. What isn't common is the fact that it also shows your horsepower and torque graphs. Now, a lot of cars show instant horsepower, how much power you're making at this very moment, but this car actually shows the graph showing how much you could be making, and then it shows in real time how much you actually are making, and that's kind of cool. And it shows the exact same thing for torque, so you can watch your horsepower and torque graphs relative to where you could be while you drive down the street. Next up, if you go down further, it has a little display where it shows all of the important performance metrics. Basically, anything a GT2 RS owner would want to know on the track. You have boost pressure, oil temperature, and altitude. I mean, I guess you could want to know that, but not more than a lot of other things. That screen, it's worth noting though, is configurable. So you can change out altitude for a lot of different stuff, including current song track, current time, but also engine temperature, and probably that's the one you'd want to go with if you're actually racing this car on the track. Next, we move on to the infotainment system, where there are a couple of interesting quirks. One is the fact that it allows you to adjust your desired amount of airflow from the climate control system, and it gives you the following options: soft, gentle air conditioning with reduced airflow, normal air conditioning with balanced airflow, or strong, forceful air conditioning with strong airflow. Every other car would say low, medium, high, or maybe soft, medium, strong, but Porsche uses these words and a description so you know exactly what you're getting when you select your desired airflow. Another interesting item, the infotainment settings, you can choose what is displayed on your footer on the little item that always stays in place on the bottom. Interestingly, this isn't as configurable as you might think. You could choose between temperature and clock, but you can't have both. So you have to decide, is it more important to know what temperature it is or what time it is? The GT2 RS owner's dilemma. Next up, you probably have seen already that everything in this car is customized to the GT2 RS. I showed you the car cover said GT2 RS, the coolant cap said GT2 RS, that front lip, the door cells, everything says GT2 RS, no exceptions. Well, actually, there is one exception. If you go into the infotainment screen in the fader settings to choose where you want to place the sound, you can see this vehicle shown in the infotainment screen clearly has back seats. It has 4 seat belts. What a tremendously unfortunate oversight. They couldn't put a picture of a GT2 RS in there. I feel like they have cheaped out in my GT2 RS, and I want my money back. The last interesting infotainment system setting comes when you select options. You can choose to have the background image displayed or not. Although when you click background image, it's just this gray image with like random lines. I've gone through a lot of menus in this thing and I can't figure out where you change that. So you can either have no background image or a random background image with gray lines that Porsche has decided is the alternate. Those are your only choices. And so those are the quirks and features of the wild and crazy GT2 RS. Now it's time to get it out on the road and drive it. All right, driving the GT2 RS. First and most important and most obvious thing is just how quick PDK, Porsche's dual clutch transmission, really is. It's still like amazing to witness just how quickly the car jumps into, I mean, the tack, just like, I've never seen it, anything like it, especially with this level of smoothness. The car in general, I don't know if it's something that I would want to live with all the time. I will say, relative to a Huracan Performante, which is sort of, I would say, this car's closest current competitor, which I've driven, it's more livable than that. 2 cup holders, but also it's a 911, just kind of less stuff you have to put up with. With that said, like the Huracan Performante, the ride in this car is unbelievably harsh. It's almost crazy to be driving this car with the ride this harsh, because it's like, I look at the 911 interior and I'm used to like sitting in a regular 991 where it's like, you know, a little bit harsh, but mostly just kind of plush. This ain't that. All right, I'm gonna give it some gas here.
P1.
Whoa. Well, that's feels like the 918. Man, this car just feels so competent. Oh, that is acceleration like I have scarcely felt before. Oh my God, that's fast. Wow. The speed is just fantastic, but also the car's steering capabilities are incredible. The steering is so precise and so quick, it feels like very few cars that I have driven before. It is really, really amazing in that respect. Wow. Wow, this thing is just a weapon. It is a total attack weapon on curvy roads like this. This is phenomenally phenomenal. Truly incredible. The acceleration is just brutal, but the steering is also so good. This car is finesse and power in a way that very few cars are. This thing is magic. Wow. Well, that was amazing. Takeaway message here is this is one of the great performance cars on sale today. You know, I saw the numbers faster than 918 around Nürburgring. I was like, it's just another Porsche. They're doing more models. Fine, but if you're gonna get one, get the ultimate one. And this is the ultimate one, and whoa, does it feel like it. That was quite a little drive there. I am really impressed with this car. Wow. And so that's the GT2 RS. This is the ultimate 911, the most insane 911 ever manufactured, and it's terrifying and thrilling at the exact same time. And now it's time to give it a Doug score.
Starting with the weekend categories and styling, the GT2 RS looks cool, but far from beautiful. Porsche has taken the wings and the gouges and the angry add-ons too far, and this car no longer looks handsome or clean. However, it is still very aggressive, and that earns it a 7 out of 10. Acceleration does 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds, which is an easy 10 out of 10. Handling is incredibly tight, better than just about everything, and it gets a 10 out of 10. Fun factor is obvious. This car accelerates with the fastest and turns with the sharpest. It's almost laughably fun to drive, and it gets a 10 out of 10. Cool factor is currently high. This is the sought-after Porsche model for sale right now, and it earns a 9 out of 10 for a total weekend score of 46 out of 50, which places it one better than the Huracan Performante, a big victory. Next up are the daily categories. Starting with features, the GT2 RS has a lot of tech thanks to Porsche infotainment, but it's low on modern amenities like adaptive cruise control. Not that anyone interested in this car will actually care. It gets a 6 out of 10. Comfort is rough, not intolerable, but not too far off, and it gets only a 3 out of 10. Quality is high. The interior is well made with nice materials, and Porsches are known for reliability, especially compared to Italian rivals, and it gets an 8 out of 10. Practicality is average for this segment with only 2 seats and a relatively small trunk, and it gets a 2 out of 10. Finally, value. This car will hold its value, but these days, basically any limited production exotic car will. For this one, though, it's a lot of money to spend on a 911. 300 grand can buy you a lot of cars that also don't have a $90,000 version. Still, it's a very special limited production car, and it gets a 6 out of 10 for a total daily score of 25 out of 50. Added up, and the Doug score is 71 out of 100, which places it in some amazing company, just one behind the 918 Spider and ahead of the Huracan Performante. From a purely fun-to-drive performance perspective, this is probably second only to the new Ford GT for the most thrilling new car you can buy, and the GT costs twice as much. The GT2 RS is, pretty simply, amazing.
Every other car would just say low, medium, high, or maybe soft, medium, and la.
Let's see. What else should we watch here?
This is a 2019 Ferrari Portofino, and it is Ferrari's entry-level model. Although for Ferrari, that's
What could you
Look at this
possibly
rig.
upgrade for the kind of person who already has one of these, a setup like this, and even blows money on a, is this a BMW wheel for your racing sim?
Yeah.
That was almost certainly taken from work?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's time for Jake's Intel Extreme Tech upgrade, and, well, it looks like you came up with some stuff. Man, you have expensive taste.
What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do I mean?
I bought things used.
How much was this? The Fanatec Club Sport Shifter SQ.
Probably like $300 US.
$100 shifter.
I already have one.
Doesn't even go in a real car. We're gonna have some fun.
You're not my real dad.
What's wrong with this one?
I don't know if I really have an answer. It's like fine.
I think the answer is Intel sponsored this video and gave him a $5,000 budget, and that one caught his fancy. Here's your steering wheel back. What are we doing here?
Well, I spent a lot of my money on audio.
I
left
see that.
one of those things downstairs. Why don't we carry that upstairs first?
Oh, good. Let's play my favorite game. Stolen.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Hey,
Stolen.
I get to recant, rebuttal. Points at something from the office here, huh?
Oh, nice.
I like
Oh,
this
can you
I bought
fly
from
over
Luke,
that?
So maybe it is from the office.
Oh, ho, ho.
No, it's not.
I wonder if we can.
No,
Because I bet you with a faster car, you
I
can
swear
fly
to God,
right
I
over
bought
that
one.
fucking
I will show
bridge.
you the receipt.
Okay, nothing so far. I mean, other than what I
Dudes.
found already.
What did you find already?
The giant
Oh.
1 terabyte thumb drive. And
I brought that
Dudes.
just for this video.
and there's no way you bought those cable ties.
Which one? Oh, yeah, definitely not. Well, don't go down there.
Well, I thought we're getting a subwoofer.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, sure.
Don't go down there. Ooh, stay out of my house.
All this down here is a litter box.
What am I even looking at here?
It's a litter robot. It just spins.
Wait, what?
And then there's a sieve there, you see?
Yeah.
So the litter goes into the sieve and then the poop stays on the other side. And
Oh,
then it
no
dumps
way.
it into the bottom.
What's one of these worth?
It's like $700.
What? A $700 motion sensor and motor?
Yeah. I think it's patented. He's like, what the hell's going on with my poop?
Yeah.
Don't look at the auto feeder either. Don't look at that. Let's go back upstairs.
How much was the auto
I think it was only
feeder?
like $100. To be fair, there was a reason for
Youch.
that.
Well, yeah, your
you heard
cat was
that. That
fat.
Yeah, that wasn't the reason, but.
That's the reason.
Well, he's lighter now. Pick him up.
Oh, I don't know if I would describe him
All
as
right,
thin. I think
let's
he's still a
you
pretty
already.
big boy. Does he get
Why
hold
is
on,
this
back?
choppy?
You guys
Why
go
is it
back.
always choppy at the end of this race?
That's a big fat no.
I don't think he knows you that well yet.
Oh my God.
So this is the same.
Is this for your computer?
Yeah.
Or maybe it was
What?
part of
Yes, what he said. Neighbors are gonna hate you.
No, my
Whatever.
office is like on the side that there's nobody.
Oh, buddy thought of that. I like the way
The
you
other
think.
sub is not.
This is going to be terrible
I'd be pretty
at Paris.
stoked if you did the computer.
I like doing computer.
Look at it. It's so clean.
Where it? Oh my, ew. Oh, ew. Ew, I thought that
Let's
was
try the
gray. Oh.
Do you see how much came off when I pulled this off?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Okay.
I swear I vacuum it regularly.
I swear you're full of
Look at the art. Isn't that pretty?
This is pretty.
My friend Douglas drew that.
Really?
Shout out the Architect's Garage.
This is Jake's car.
You can't drive that. It's a painting.
Hey! I mean, he can drive a two-dimensional car just fine, David.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, actually, speaking of which, one of these Predators is definitely from work.
Yeah, I bought it from work. Actually, both of them are from work.
That is literally what they all say. All right, I'm gonna build a computer.
I think you should do it downstairs.
I'm gonna build a computer right here.
Because I gotta do stuff in here.
You gotta do stuff. Well, what
We
the
gotta-
hell are you doing in here?
Well, we gotta hang up the speakers. I paid $200 for them on Craigslist. I think they usually sell for like $600, so I was pretty stoked about that.
Used speakers is
Yes.
the way to go.
Used audio, everything. Just
Yeah.
buy used. Headphones I can understand. Oh my God, you're wrapped around the $2,000 headphones. Oh God. How did that even happen? What? Oh my God, that's under a lot of tension actually. God, leave your brother alone. Did I tell you you have to water cool it?
I noticed.
And change the motherboard and CPU and RAM?
Okay.
This thing runs at like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Sometimes I restart my computer and it says like CPU overheat warning.
This is not gonna improve the situation.
But this is.
But that will. Okay. Jake's upgrade is actually pretty straightforward then. He's already got an RTX 3080, so we're not going to be changing out his GPU.
Yet.
Already got a great power supply, good quality case that just needs a little cleaning. So we're going platform upgrade. From this 5900X, we're going to a 13900K, arguably the fastest gaming CPU on the planet.
Let's use the Corvette, like we should have in the first place.
And wow! I'm sorry. Did you just buy a motherboard that costs as much as your last CPU memory combo?
I think it costs more than the new CPU even. To be fair, I asked for like a Z790E or F, and then they sent this. So
Zed.
thanks Asus for the free upgrade.
Canadians.
And Intel for the free upgrade.
Yeah, does that count against your budget? How does that work?
I'm not asking questions. I think I will make your life a bit easier. You can use...
That was the first time for everything.
I feel like it's usually the other way around. Anyways, you can use the stock fans that are in here. You think the EK ones are better?
I have to have a look at them. You know what's really funny is I forget who it was, but someone just announced a fan and they're like, yeah, it's really optimized for pressure on radiators because there's no random gaps around the frames.
Dude, there's absolutely something going on with
So it like really pushes all the thing through. And it brought me back to, I swear to you, like 10 years ago when Corsair released their first AIOs and their fans had these gaps around the frame, and I did this masking tape mod where you just like cover the gaps and it lowered temps by like a degree or two. And I'm sitting here going, whoa. Who is designing radiator fans that have gaps around the frames? And people have still been doing it for 10 years. Drives me crazy. These do not have gaps around the frames though. These look like they will actually mate properly with the radiator. So I'm kind of tempted to put these in.
Okay. I mean, it's your wiring nightmare.
I know you feel like you're helping, but taking the box that contained all the water cooling parts
No, I wanted to make a mess, yeah.
and blowing it up all over the counter was not actually helpful.
Well, that was like the goal.
Thanks.
Got him.
This is no longer secure.
Yeah, I think going to the second ramp here.
Why
oh my God.
An LGA socket is not a bad thing to have.
Or the yellow
I mean, the good news is the dust
tank,
filters are clearly working. Look
and
at
then
this.
going around here like this.
This thing's clean.
I started putting the cooler brackets on, but then I remembered I have the.
Thanks for the bump.
Ooh, the contact frame.
Contact frame. I figure for 20 bucks, I might as well just throw it on.
That's
there,
worth a couple degrees. By the time you're going custom water cooling, if you're not using the best thermal compound or picking up one of these contact frames, which the function's right in the name, it helps the cooler make better contact with the CPU, you're kind of not doing it right.
Mind you, you shouldn't have to buy these.
No.
But.
That's dumb.
We're doing
But here we are.
Oh, this replaces the top of the socket.
Which
I don't know how much I like this contact frame and that you have to take all this off, but don't over tighten it when you put it back on.
Feels like you're more in control with the Corvette.
This is a really, really sensitive operation.
Just so slow.
You do not want to drop a screw or anything like that in this land grid array of pins.
You know what I should do is...
Yeah, put the CPU in there. So you have to be able to hold it down while also screwing it in, and as soon as you put down the one side, it kind of springs up the other side. This very much voids the warranty on your motherboard and CPU.
185 around the bend.
Just saying.
Like full drift. It's insane.
Oh, Jesus.
Ah!
There we go.
Question for you, Jake. I'm about to mount the radiator. Yes, I know you want it in the front, but do you want the fans in front of the rad or do you want the fans behind the rad?
I vote front. It's got a fan filter.
Okay. I might need a hand getting these in here then.
What are you...
So basically,
oh, I see what you're doing.
Yeah, I gotta hold them mush. So if you can grab those cables,
No.
and then if we can pull this across.
Hold on, let me tuck the cables into the cable management.
I just want to get this first one.
Hold on. Back up the dust.
Lane.
How you doing? How you doing?
This is definitely not the absolute fastest RAM I could put on this board, but it is 6000 CL32, so it's pretty quick. Oh wow. It was the same price as CL40 6000. It was on sale, so it was like 230 or 240 bucks US. So, yeah, goodbye.
Want to throw me that board?
Are you ready for that? I think we should.
Actually,
we should put this in first.
No, I want to put the fans in the top and the back first.
No, I don't want to put fans on the top.
Why don't you want fans in
Let's
the top?
Avija.
Just the back
Let's
is
do
fine.
that. Let's try the
No,
I don't want top fans.
Yeah, no, look, they're
W12,
white.
we could
They're
do
like.
that.
I know, but they'll be somewhere else.
I'd rather you put that black Noctua fan. Will it fit?
No.
Oh, damn it.
That's a negatory.
Wait, I have more EK fans. RGB fans. I have an AIO as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sold.
Just go grab that. It's upstairs.
All right.
It's in the closet. Should I wall mount the speakers?
Let's go have a look at it.
Okay.
So, is it like an angled mount? Like
Hello, new
I would probably go
viewers.
further over.
Oh, you want to go like
Feel
to
free
the
to
corner
drop me a
for it?
chat on any cars you want to
Stick
see,
off the wall. They're huge.
or anything you want to watch on
today's
YouTube,
video. We got thick boys.
What
or
about
another Twitch
like,
channel.
just lay it sideways on the desk. I might have to bring the monitor up a bit, but
I am not gonna lie. I hate the aesthetic of a lying flat monitor.
But-
if you're into it, and
All right, first time with Avija on Paris.
It
Let's see.
fits perfect.
and look, we have this cool thing.
Or
So
Avia,
this
the
company's
Lotus.
called Sonar
Avia,
Works.
Avija,
They
whatever.
make- what does that look like?
Ooh, the Lotus Electric.
I don't know, like a fancy thermometer, some kind of probe.
Not sure if
Oh,
it's
it's
going to
microphone.
have the
Yeah,
turning
it's a correction
working radius
microphone.
here.
So usually
This is
when you have
4-star, I
computer
believe.
speakers, you can't really room correct them unless you buy like a home theater receiver and use that. But you don't want a home theater receiver; they're huge. And they use a
So
lot
you
of
can
power.
get over that?
So this company makes a piece of software. You hook up this mic, you measure your computer speakers, and it makes a correction profile for them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And they
Okay,
have
we know that the
headphones for
Avija
it.
sucks.
All right, are we gonna go this route then?
I think this is the way to go. Slight problem with that plan.
Okay.
Side, and it's bigger.
You know what though? I already volunteered for downstairs work on the computer duty, so that
Avija
sounds
sucks.
like a you problem. We moved the computer, so now there's so much dust in the room. Oh, hold on.
You're not allowed to go in there.
I'm not allowed in there because this is where you keep all the big stuff you took from the office.
You said I could borrow that.
Yeah, I said you could borrow it. That was like 2 years ago.
And look, you have one at your house too.
Check,
I
1,
steal
2,
more from
3.
the office than anyone.
Yes. Oh my God, it's you. Hey, Rippy.
It's a thick boy.
It's gonna do many wubs though. It's nothing like a 12-inch high excursion driver as a footrest. It's ergonomic.
On the one hand, okay, you can count on Jake to put like tons of research into everything he buys, but on the other hand,
Right.
it's
Volkswagen.
like individual research into that individual item. The amount of thought into how it all goes together tends to be a little
Look,
more scattershot.
RCA splitter. All right, this monitor is pretty sick. It's DVI, but it does work. I have DVI to DisplayPort.
I think by sick you mean ill.
Yeah.
Oh, this is stolen from the office.
What?
Actually, no, this isn't.
No, it's not.
Nope. This NHD 9L is almost certainly stolen from the office, though.
Oh yeah, 100%.
There's the asset tag. This is definitely stolen from the office.
Yeah.
I no longer care because I don't want these things to appear on
I
camera.
think you told me to take that one home.
And a second iFixit kit.
That one is probably from the office.
Well, I don't think you're the worst.
You missed the NAS in the garage. Oh my God. It's the garage heater.
Yeah, I do not like to be licked by dogs.
Ripley, go.
No.
Go. Place. Go.
Oh, dude.
Don't get the camera lens.
How does that, wait, how did that do that during
I
the...
always end up under people's desks. I couldn't help
must be
noticing
a
that
glitch.
you could use some of our upcoming magnetic cable management things for your power strip.
keyword upcoming. This monitor is a bit overkill as a side monitor. Hello, Ripley. It's 165 hertz IPS. I think it's display HDR 400. Yeah, it totally is. And this is my side monitor.
What? This is for Twitch chat?
But they have gotten so cheap. This is like a $400 monitor Canadian.
Yeah.
On sale.
That's like $300
And then
dollars.
Yeah.
over
Hey,
here,
can you help?
do a little bit of flippity doodah.
I am
and then
helping.
You're
I'm
still on
jamming your
path to
sub
get
under
that gold.
Okay.
And then the finish is right.
Mint. I like these mounts a lot.
NICE.
gonna have to
Nice,
go.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
I don't know if the other one can even, so it's not enough. It's like all the way up, and it's still not.
It's good enough for the video.
Why did you pee in the house? No.
Jake's dog
That's
had an
bad.
accident, so I'm on my own in here right now. This surround sound setup has got to be for the Sims.
All right,
app.
F1LM,
You're
we're gonna try
have
that one.
2 giant subwoofers in this room, Jake. What the hell, man?
You're not my real dad.
I didn't know Logitech even still makes these 5.1 kits.
Guess how much I paid for this? It's used, but brand new. It was $100.
What?
Yeah, I think it's usually 400 or 500.
Yeah.
They're not amazing. They're not gonna sound anywhere as good as those CAF speakers, but they're also pretty good, especially for racing sim.
Yeah, if what you want is directional audio.
Yeah. Hey, look in this box. You're never gonna guess where all these cables are from.
Wow. It's from Infinite Cables.
Yeah, Infinite Cables.
What a surprise. Jake never shills for Infinite Cables.
Look, they make great products, okay? But this is pretty cool. Active optical display port to run to this monitor. I was using a long normal cable, and it was not
It's
it.
flaky.
No, it
No,
couldn't,
it's
it
flaky.
couldn't run the full res.
Couldn't help
Mama
noticing that
calling.
This is a really long cable to go from there to there.
Yeah.
I'm in 8th place. This ain't gonna work
Just kind of
anyway.
future-proof.
The thing about optical cables is that most of the cost is in the transceivers.
Yeah.
This is cheap. This is expensive. So the cost difference between a 100-foot one and a 25-foot one is actually pretty low.
It's like 20 bucks.
Yeah.
This is 50 foot, and the 25 I think was $10 less.
Sorry, Jake, you gave me 2 RCAs. Do you want the red one or the white one to plug in the sub?
Both of them. You're not using the LFE. You're using.
Oh, that's right. I always see that on subwoofers. I'm like, who would plug this into a subwoofer? You get the sub out.
It's when you have a 2-channel DAC that doesn't have a sub channel. So I'm using an RCA splitter. One channel will go in there, and the other one there. And then the other cable goes to the speaker amp. And this goes to the sub. It's cheaty, but it should still sound fine. Oh God. Okay. Everything's
All right, everybody.
It's
That's all she wrote
spicy salami, I will
tonight.
say.
Even with banana.
Thank you so much for joining me again. VODs on YouTube, live streams here on Twitch and YouTube and everywhere. Twitter if you want, but I don't know if you can rewind on Twitter. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Okay, guys? Bye. Oh, shit.